Good evening. We will call the Airport Advisory Board October 23rd, 2025 meeting to order. And we will go ahead and start with our roll call, please. Thank you, and I see Dan coming in. Perfect. All right, next up is our public invited to be heard. Before we start that, I wanted to just take a moment to note that the Longmont Airport is about to celebrate its 80th anniversary at the location it sits at 229 Airport Road on Tuesday. This coming Tuesday will be the 80th anniversary. And further in the agenda, I'd like to ask for a proclamation for that. And I'm starting to wonder about historic recognition for the airport, some of those buildings especially. So we'll open the public invited to be heard. I do have a sign-up list. I'll go through this first, and then if there's other people who would like to speak who aren't signed up, you can come up at the end. We do keep that open. I need you to give your name and your address, and if you'd state if you're in the city of Longmont, and then you have 5 minutes to speak. Please direct your comments to the board, and we can't answer you back, so just know that we're here to listen and we are taking notes, but we can't answer back. So I will go ahead and call Jonathan Casimir. Is that right? Thank you.
Mic's on? Yep, sounds good.
Get it way up there.
All right, my name is Jonathan Casimir, 1900 Creekside Drive here in Longmont. I am in favor of the airport, one remaining there, as well as also safe from harassment. But I've been hearing that we are getting proposals for landing fees. I would like to pitch my voice to say no to landing fees. If these landing fees are to deter the amount of noise complaints that we're getting, I would want to say that, well, the landing fees are more likely to affect the small guys, the quieter airplanes, while the bigger, louder airplanes are just going to continue to operate as normal. Also, please pay attention to how varied the grouping of people that are making those noise complaints, because from what I understand, it's kind of like a very small group, maybe one or two people, and they're all associated with each other, all making the same complaint. Landing fees are also a negative for the local business infrastructure here in Longmont, because a lot of student pilots and young pilots and private pilots that are just kind of paying their own way to fly come to Longmont and visit for the fuel, as well as coming into Longmont to take a look around and eat at the restaurants and stuff. The other thing, that Longmont is one of the key locations in the foothills area between Salt Lake and Cheyenne and Amarillo, Texas, as far as a stop off for charity flights like the Angel Flight West in specific, and the Pilots and Paws. These are activities where the pilots will fly patients in need out of their own pocket. So increasing the expense for a charity event, I would say, goes against the intent and nature of the spirit of Longmont. So please do not instate landing fees at Longmont. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Robert Lehner. Bob Lehner, thank you.
Bob Liner. Actually, we live in Berthoud. We have a business at the airport and have had for quite a few years, since about 2000. We learned to fly here in '79. It was known as a friendly place to fly. I'm not sure it's quite as friendly. I do know that the structures haven't changed since '79. The buildings for the FBO are the same. But very little has changed as far as improving the airport. facilities. The airport is quite significant, as was mentioned. We have access to 16,000 to 19,000 general aviation airports across the country. There's only 520 commercially served airports. The senior member of our family flew here and as an air taxi, on-demand air taxi, flying personnel and equipment out to various facilities, flying prisoners for the Marshal Service and the Boulder Sheriff's Department, flying skydivers, flying a lot of people who are hunters or campers or skiers. A lot of the airports that areas they wanted to go to were a whole lot faster and easier to get to by air, be it steamboat, if they wanted to go to Glenwood, and he would service. If you pull up PBS and you look at the list of communities on PBS, he's flown people to almost every one of them. And he would often do that, change off from jumpers to paying passengers within a week. The airport is a treasure for training, and the training is, we now fortunately have people from the Innovation Center that are involved in the airport. And they are young people who will go on to either fly, be mechanics, or take the skills they learn and become engineers and technicians. The STEM program has been a great bonus to aviation. We've helped the one in Colorado Springs. The first year, they graduated 42 students from high school, and they got their sailplane licenses. 42 in the first season. I am quite disappointed in the airport not following through with a terminal and not keeping up the airport as far as mowing. The pavement on the taxiway is horrible. Straight across to the north from my hangar, the gaps in the asphalt, there's a gentleman out there filling them, 5-inch wide gaps in the taxiway in front of his hangar. That's disgraceful. Good effort would be to contact our engineering facilities at School of Mines in Colorado and find out if there's a better asphalt mix that wouldn't shrink as much and cause as much maintenance. Right after the last fill of the cracks, it had sunk about an inch. It was no filler in it, basically no filler, no gravel, and it just sunk back in. The weeds came up through the cracks within a month. So that's basically my pitch on the airport. It's a valuable airport. It has a good mix of aircraft. We serve the fire and flood and rescue. It's a good training ground. In terms of the training for the airlines or any other professional pilots, we want to see them go to different airports. So that comes into reciprocity. Are we going to charge more fees? And are other airports going to charge more fees? Are we going to be competitive at all in that regard?
Thank you, Mr. Lehner. The time is up. I've got Carol up next.
Carolina, 229 Airport Road. I'm the other half of the business out there. We finished our home up in Sugarloaf in the late 70s, and in 79 we decided we were going to learn to fly. We looked at Boulder Airport, we looked at Jeffco Airport, and we came to Longmont and got our licenses here. And then as we got older and we were looking for a retirement business, we decided, gee, maybe we could do something in aviation. So looking around, we came to Longmont and opened our business. That was in 2001. And so we've been there quite a while. Now the problem is we have customers who fly in here. So they're going to fly in, land, and pick up their product that we sell and take off and get home, and a month later they're going to get a bill for having landed here. And that's just totally unreasonable. It's going to kill my business, as well as all the flight training business and the other small businesses on the airport. I don't see a reason for it other than the people who are suggesting it want to get rid of the airport. And that's a terrible way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Kyle.
Good evening, everyone. Kyle Foley, 2331 Santa Fe Drive here in Longmont. I'm a pilot based here at Longmont, a board member of EAA Chapter 648 at the airport, and a senior at MSU Denver studying airport management. I recently flew my 1946 airplane cross-country to New Jersey, landing at more than 25 airports. What struck me was how much pride other communities take in their airports. Longmont felt neglected by comparison. That's not easy to say, but it's important. Our airport is stagnant. It's not growing. It's not improving. It's not being run like the business it should be. Right now, it feels more like a burden on the city rather than an asset for the community. But here's the thing. Airports don't have to be like this. The nicer the airport, the more people want to visit it. Pilots, families, businesses, and neighbors alike. Every airport I flew to that had a cafe, a clean ramp, good signage, or even just flowers and benches, had people hanging around, enjoying the place. When an airport becomes a place people love, the noise complaints fade into the background because the community sees value in it. The city has made it clear it's tired of running the airport, so let's take that seriously. It's time to explore other options for how we manage it. Other options that make the airport self-sufficient, professionally operated, and community-driven. And the best part, we already have people at the airport and in the broader community who are ready and willing to help. Volunteers like pilots, mechanics, and residents who would gladly give up their time to clean, improve, and maintain the airport if there were a clear path forward. This isn't just about asking the city for more. It's about standing up as a community and making the place better. That means running it like a business, setting goals, tracking performance, and reinvesting in its future. It means small but meaningful improvements like better signage, landscaping, lighting, and spaces that welcome families. It means public events, more food options, and more opportunities for people to visit, not just fly in and out. This airport is already a community asset to pilots. It needs to become a community asset to everyone who lives in Longmont and the surrounding towns. I know there are people here tonight who don't love the airport, and I get that. But we're not going to change anyone's minds with arguments. We're going to change it by making this airport better, cleaner, more organized, more open, and more welcoming. When the airport is a place people love, the opposition gets quieter because the community is on our side. We have an opportunity right now to stop accepting the status quo. Let's make this airport something the whole city and state can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Next is Troy Anderson.
Yeah, my name is Troy Anderson. I live 1232 Twin Peaks Avenue, Longmont. And I've been a pilot here for since the 60s. One of the things that we're here, or a lot of us are going to be here for, is this idea of putting some kind of a landing fee on the airport. I don't think that's a well thought out deal because it hasn't worked anyplace else in the country. What happens is you get a guy flying in here from Kansas, and 2 weeks later after he's been here, you send him a note for X number of dollars because he made 3 or 4 landings. He's just going to ignore it. That's historically what happens. It just doesn't work. The other thing is that I own an hangar out at the airport, and I pay quite a bit for that hangar. To the city. I mean, a lot of money compared to, it's the equivalent of getting a RV storage place or something like that. And that, if we're going to add on people that are going to be charged for coming in and out of here, I know most of my friends, and I used to live at Van Air. I've got friends from all over that fly in. They're just not going to come here. That's mainly what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Catherine Connor.
My name is Catherine Connor, 229 Airport Road. I am here on behalf of Aerosphere, the flight school on the field. We are, as I'm sure it will come as no surprise, not a pro-landing fee. In the past, it's shown that it doesn't turn a revenue for the airport. The effort that it takes to collect on them and to monitor them ends up costing as much as it makes to charge small planes of our size. Not to mention that who it actually ends up then hurting is the small businesses in Longmont. We are a Part 61 flight school, meaning we are a true mom and pop small business. We are also a major customer at the airport. Putting in landing fees would risk us having to close our doors or relocate to an airport that they aren't at, because it is not standard practice to have landing fees for small aircrafts. Those prices, whether they get passed on to our students who are with us rather than the big name brand 141s so that they can get out of here with as little debt as possible or be eaten by us, we don't have huge margins. We're doing our very best. That being said, we're incredible customers at the airport. We spend on average $12,000, $13,000 on just fuel and landing fee or tie downs. Not landing fees, that'd be terrible. At any given month, to lose our business, I can't imagine that they'd be able to make it up chasing down the one-off out-of-staters, because we can't afford to pay that. I'd also like to mention that we have spent the money to convert our small trainer aircrafts over to unleaded fuel. So that gas that we're buying is not putting lead out into our communities. We are doing our best to be stewards of the airport. We are training good pilots. We are doing our very, very best to make the airport a place that people want to be. We are very compliant when it comes to trying to make it as little of a nuisance as possible. But at the end of the day, you don't learn to land the first time that you land. You don't learn to land the second time. It's one of those things that it takes repetition. It takes building muscle memory. And so we do our absolute best to keep it contained, but you don't want your United pilot to go, well, I trained out of Longmont Airport, and so I was limited on the number of touch and goes that I could do. I don't have as many landings as the other people sitting around me, when here in 10, 15 years, they're flying you and your family. Touch and goes, I understand why the community has their issues with them, but they are a really valuable part of the training for the 18-year-olds that I fly with that chose this over a university. We're not out there playing around. We're out there building the future. We're out there creating the safest pilots possible to take you, your family, your friends on the major airlines in the future. That being said, we also, landing fees would harm the airport in general. You'd see so much less traffic. And when we're out there, it's a really cool place to be. You have little kids hanging off the fences watching planes land. You have families enjoying root beer floats over at the food truck. Longmont is this niche, beautiful little airport up against the mountains. It's so, so cool. And to drive people away by being one of the only airports in the country to have landing fees for small aircrafts in what's a public use space, like a park or a library or a school. We are a school. It would just really be a detriment to not just the small businesses that are putting tax revenue back into the community, but to the community itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian Nye.
I'm Adrian Nye. I'm president of the Colorado Pilots Association. I live in Lafayette. Just wanted to start by saying that the basic problem is that flight training has increased greatly over the last few years. Everybody knows that. But the fact is that the reason for that was there was a huge airline pilot shortage. And now that has basically ended, and the airlines are no longer hiring. So if you're a kid looking at spending $60,000, $80,000 to be a professional pilot, you want to see that there's a job at the end of that. And right now, there isn't. There's a lot of flight instructors with the hours that qualify them to be an airline pilot that can't get jobs, and so flight training is either is already decreasing or is going to decrease greatly here shortly. The whole aviation business is very cyclical, and we've just gone through a peak. And so I want to ask the council to not overreact to the recent increase in flight training. So that's my first point. Secondly, landing fees are, if the goal is really to make the airport self-sustaining, landing fees are not the best way to do it. I mean, there's a crying need for more hangars around the whole front range. And if you guys wanted to use some of the land there in the airport to build some new hangars, you could charge high rates and easily make up the small shortfall of the airport, which is currently 0.04% of the city budget. So it's really a super tiny percentage. It's sort of hard to believe that the financial reason, the shortfall of the airport, is really the reason for the landing fees. It's more about noise. And so the main point is that the problem is going to probably reduce here in the short term anyway. So no need to overreact. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, Toby?
How do you do? I'm Gary Toby. I live in Centennial, but 50 years ago I was flying aircraft out of this beautiful airport. And as has been pointed out, it's a starting point. We say often a mile of highway takes you a mile. A mile of airport. It took me and my wife and family across the nation to all four corners. Initially out of this 50 years ago from Longmont. I live in Centennial now, and there's a little more traffic down there than here. But I will say that this is, it's part of the total world aviation program. It's, you know, even though it's the small town of Longmont, it's part of the nation's commerce, regardless of where you are. Obviously, Colorado Pilots Association opposes landing fees. They're generally a bad idea, and has already been expressed. If you're going to fly into the Front Range and you find someplace with a landing fee and everybody else does not have a landing fee, then you don't go to that little airport. And so I think it's one of those things that would be counterproductive. I thank Longmont for having this airport, including, 80 years ago? We're going to celebrate. That's amazing. But it's good to have this. You've heard very good positive comments from somebody about half my age probably who explained better what's going on at the airport. So we're delighted that there is an airport. Be sure that it keeps going and is healthy. And we'll look forward to another 50 years of success at the Longmont Airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Winfield Green.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Winfield Green. I live at 849 Snowberry Street in Longmont, about a mile from the airport. Right under the downwind leg. If you're a pilot here, you know what that means. Right next to the airport. I'm a student pilot at Aerosphere. You've heard from a few people already that work there or train there. I'm a student, and my goal is to eventually fly for a large airline like United. So I'm going through training right now to hopefully get there. I actually moved to Longmont to have access to this airport and the flight school that is there, the small business. So with that in mind, the airport is a huge asset for Longmont, and it's utilized. I think we can see that. You go out there any day of the week, and there's planes, people training, small businesses functioning. It's an asset, and it's utilized. I would love to invest in it more and see it looking better, but it is utilized, and that's great to see. There's small businesses like Aerosphere, skydiving business, and that's only 2 out of many. Emergency services use our airport. It's an important asset for them. And in my case, flight training. It's what's going to make my dreams possible. Another thing I'd like to note is that aviation is at the heart of Longmont. This airport is important, but also ATC has a huge facility up in North Longmont there. Quite a few people there doing a great job, and I'd like to thank them as well, especially in this time when they're not getting paid. I interact with them on a daily basis, and they do a fantastic job, and they are residents of Longmont. So with all that in mind, I'd like to comment on the proposed landing fees at our airport. Effectively, this would be a regressive tax, and this group probably knows what that means. It's a tax that affects those of a lower social status or lower income than those who make more money and have more that have more. We want to avoid these. A community that works for everyone avoids regressive taxes that disproportionately affect those of a lower income. There's a misconception that many people in aviation are wealthy. That's definitely not true for our airport. I have a lot of great things to say about my flight instructors over here. 3 of them are sitting right there. I cannot say any of them are rich, unfortunately. That's definitely not the case. And not the case for me either. I need this airport to achieve my goals, and so do they. So these fees will simply hamper that effort. Most people at the airport who are landing on a daily basis would pay these fees and still have to land. I still have to make X number of landings to achieve my goals. It's more money out of my pocket. It's less students for these guys. It really slows us down. That's the effect of these fees. And it won't reduce traffic. I have to make these landings. I think these businesses have to do what they have to do on a daily basis. It's just a tax on the citizens of Longmont. So with that in mind, I'd like to urge this group to reconsider landing fees. I think it won't have the effect that is stated. It probably won't make enough money to put a dent in the airport budget, and it probably won't change anything about the noise complaints. So I'd like to reconsider the landing fees. I'd also like to urge productive conversation between the airport community and the citizens of Longmont to solve our problems together and have a functional, productive airport. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joe Friedman.
Good evening. My name is Joe Friedman. I live at 5723 Four Leaf Drive. I am pleased for the initiative to implement landing fees at Vance Brand. We can join some 200 other airports around the country that have successfully done so. I mean, after all, the airport is rendering a service, offering access to a quality runway and all the safety features and services that can be provided. So this is an opportunity, and let's do it right. The fee structure for the landing fees need to be equitable and non-discriminatory. This means a fee structure that is for all aircraft, both home-based and transient. With the exception of public safety operations, it is reasonable and fair for all aircraft operators to pay for the services in the form of a landing fee. And it is a winning situation for everyone. This affords the airport to raise desperately needed revenue, and aircraft operators will be entitled to the privilege of contributing to their chosen Vance Brand airport, knowing that their fees promote their own safety and accessibility. And I thank you.
Thank you. I've got Brett, is that right? I haven't got my glasses on, sorry. Brett.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Brett Plemainville, and I live at 5846 Granville Avenue here in Longmont. I was born in Longmont. I earned my pilot's license in Longmont when I was 17, and I'm continuing to train now to get my instrument rating here in Longmont from local Longmont businesses. And I also live directly beneath the flight path of Longmont Airport. So I am very aware of both sides of the noise issue. Landing fees will not solve the noise issue. Let's call it out for what it is. Private, out-of-state companies have found ways to make money by hijacking the ADS-B safety system that was funded by taxpayers, airplane owners, and pilots. They find towns like ours and make dubious promises of less noise and more airport revenue, somehow implying that reduced airport traffic accomplishes both. I'm not quite sure I understand how that happens. Congress is looking to make this abuse of our public safety infrastructure illegal, and it really should be. In Longmont, landing fees will not deter the corporate flight schools from landing here, as you heard from others. In fact, it might actually lead to more low-level missed approaches, which are louder and less safe than normal landing operations. Landing fees will make cross-country aircraft less likely to stop in Longmont to buy fuel or to patronize our small businesses, many of which you've heard from today. The airport food truck is another one. And Longmont will suffer with weaker airport businesses and less tax revenue. But most importantly, as you've seen from many of the people here today, many of the young people here today, the landing fees will hurt longtime Longmont citizens like me, as well as all of these young people who are trying to learn how to fly and become our next generation of pilots. They're from high schools and community colleges here. They're working at Longmont businesses, and they're training with Longmont Flight Schools. They're working to become the next generation of pilots who will airlift our loved ones to the hospital, help protect our neighborhoods from wildfires, fly us safely to our vacations, or even be inspired to become our next 3 Longmont astronauts. I want our hometown kids to have these opportunities like I did and be able to pursue good jobs that don't require a college degree. Much harder to find these days. Landing fees will just make it that much harder for them. If the problem is aircraft noise, the answer is not slapping on junk landing fees that compromise safety and hurt our Longmont citizens and businesses. Let's work together as Longmont neighbors to find practical solutions that focus on our community's needs. I'm sure there are others here that are willing to join me in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That ends the sign-up list. Do I have anybody else who would like to speak at this time? Go ahead, come forward.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Gary Stubbe. I live on Hygiene Road outside of the city limits of Longmont. I too am right under the traffic pattern for the runway 11 at the airport. I've lived there for 10 years, and one of the reasons I moved there is to be close to the airport, and I like hearing the airplanes go overhead and looking up and see what kind they are. I'm a pilot who's been flying for 36 years. I have over 4,000 hours flying. I've flown over 270 Young Eagles pilots, or Young Eagles kids, given free rides to kids between 7 and 17 years old. I hope to pass 300 this year, but I didn't quite make that. I'm about 275 kids. I've also flown Flying Samaritans, where I've taken doctors and nurses down to open clinics in Mexico. In addition, I'm a mentor at the Innovation Center in the Aeronautical Program, and I like to think I've made a difference in some of these kids' lives, and I've certainly enjoyed it. And for all of those activities, I paid 100% of the expenses of those activities. I bought the fuel, I maintained my airplane, and pay all the fixed costs, which is included in my rent to the city. I'm a tenant of the airport, or tenant of the Longmont with my hangar. So as much as I enjoy those activities and plan to continue them, and as long as I can continue to fly, I would really resent having to pay a landing fee in order to do that. It's one more added expense to those activities that I don't think I should have to incur. And I'd also like to point out that landing fees, one of the things that I suspect would happen if you were to implement landing fees is you would reduce the traffic, the training traffic for a short time. And it would start to go to places like Boulder, Fort Collins, or back to Metro. And then what happens is those airports are missing out, and they don't want the extra traffic, so they'll implement landing fees as well. And within a very short amount of time, you'll be right back to where we are now as far as the traffic. People, when all airports have landing fees, the planes are just going to go to the same place they're going right now. So they'll be back at Longmont. The other thing I'd like to point out is there have been numerous letters to the newspaper about the payment of taxes and that it's taxpayer supported. It is the airport is taxpayer supported. It's I don't really know the finances of Longmont Airport very well, but I understand that most of the expenses are covered by the fees and rents that are paid by pilots. The fuel flowage fees and the rents. In addition to that, there's a federal payment, the Airport Improvement Program, and that is funded strictly by aviation activities. So the taxpayers who pay into the Airport Improvement Plan that's administered by the FAA, those taxpayers are pilots. Those taxpayers are ones who fly on commercial aircraft. There's a gate fee at Denver. It goes into the AIP. There's a tax on avgas that goes into the AIP. So every airport you see, or every airplane you see flying around has paid into the AIP program one way or another. It's not coming out of income tax or property tax. It's coming out of aviation-related activities, and it goes into aviation support of aviation infrastructure. So that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for speaking. Do I have anybody else who would like to speak? Go ahead and come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Bryce Bennett. I live at 2450 Airport Road. I'm a freshman currently at Silver Creek High School, and I have been visiting this airport since I have been 4 years old. This airport has offered me many opportunities to both explore what I want to do, which is become a future pilot, and explore other opportunities like the EAA chapter. This has also given me an opportunity to help connect with people and other pilots and talk about their professions. This airport should not get landing fees because it will plain and simple not help anybody here. Landing fees are going to, slow down the traffic, but in the long term, it's going to waste money. And we will not see a general increase in revenue as the time goes on. This airport right now has plenty of money being generated and does not need landing fees to help generate money. This airport also helps many youth, just like me, help explore what they want to do and help connect with people. It supports very local businesses and supports people like Aerosphere and the Flight Deck Grill. This airport has been a very important asset in not only my life, but everybody's here. Everybody life's here. This airport will continue to make a lasting change on Longmont, whether that's installing landing fees or not. Thank you, I guess.
Thank you, Bryce. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? John, go ahead. Come on.
John Grunsfeld. My business is at 229 Airport Road. I live in unincorporated Boulder County. And I want to thank Brett. I'm one of those astronauts on the field, and I think we may have just heard from a future astronaut. But I want to talk a little bit about process. If we're concerned about noise, which I think we are, there is a process that the FAA has to help assess us, to help assess the noise, to help assess traffic, and provide the city guidance on methods and techniques for addressing those. And it's a formal ask to the Federal Aviation Administration. It's paid for by our taxes. And before the city makes decisions on any policies which would affect traffic and business at the Longmont Airport, it ought to follow that process and get that kind of data. The same is true for traffic and safety. If there's a concern about traffic and safety, and we want to limit the number of, say, touch and goes or number of planes in the pattern that would trigger something, the FAA also has people who are experts in that and can help guide us by asking them, which the council did say ask them, but there's actually a formal study they can do to help us in that as far as capacity limits. On landing fees, I think the city ought to not just say, well, let's, this company says we can get another 100K in revenue, which I think is dubious, but the city ought to actually do an economic analysis and say, well, what will that effect that have on visiting aircraft? And what effect will that have on the total economic benefit to the city? And I think what you'll find, as many small airports like ours have found, that in fact it's a negative. I mean, the Colorado Department of Transportation assessed that Longmont Airport provides $75 million economic benefit to the city. It's a rather detailed study. It's not an off the cuff. If landing fees were to reduce that by 1%, by a factor of 7, it would wipe out any benefit from the landing fees. And so we really ought to look at the total question of, how landing fees or any other decision would affect the economics of the budget at the Longmont Airport. As you've heard, we pay every flight as pilots, everybody who burns fuel, we pay into the Aviation Trust Fund, which funds the airport. I pay business taxes here in Longmont. I pay sales taxes on all the business that I do in Longmont. The Erie Airport has a different problem. They have too much money right now. They're generating more capital by their airport operations than their budget. And so they formed an economic development committee to decide how to spend that money. And, you've got to scratch your head. It's a smaller airport, less aircraft, lower lease fees. Where are they getting all that money? Well, a significant fraction probably comes from the fuel flowage fees for mile-high skydiving. A decision that was made by the city of Longmont was to have them move their fuel farm over to Erie, and now Erie is benefiting from all of that revenue. The city could decide to allow Mile High to have their fuel farm here and get those flowage fees back. That's the kind of thing that should go into an economic analysis. Look at other sources. The number one thing that would improve the economics at Longmont would be to invest in the airport. Make it more attractive, not less. Make it more part of a community, not less. Help somebody develop a restaurant on the field. I was inspired by watching planes take off and land at a little airport in Chicago called Meigs Field, which sadly was closed by a mayor whose wife didn't like the noise. I think we should invest in the airport to help inspire future pilots and astronauts, not just continue to let it degrade and complain about it. As far as traffic control, there is only one way to control traffic at an airport, and that is to make it controlled airspace. That is the definition. And for an airport like Longmont, we are considered, for all practical purposes, uncontrolled airspace, which means the pilots have to control themselves in the pattern and communicating with each other in order to take off and land. A control tower would establish Longmont as a controlled airspace. Fort Collins Loveland Airport did that, and they seem to really like it. It improves safety. It allows for flow control. It does have a cost associated with it. Generally, we can ask the FAA if we qualify, and if they deem it's meritorious, based on these other studies as well, they also fund it. The council will be judged by the decision it makes to help the city. It should make those decisions based on hard data and wide citizen input. We should encourage the council, I encourage you to encourage the council, to make better decisions regarding the airport than it has in the past couple of decades. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Colin Dielman. I live in Broomfield, but my business is in Longmont Airport. I'm a flight instructor. I'm an aircraft owner. I rent a hangar, but I'm also the aviation instructor at St. Vrain Valley School's Innovation Center. So I teach 200 plus students a year, aviation, at the school. And while we've all heard about landing fees, we as the Innovation Center are really thinking, how might Longmont Airport start really rethinking strategically, how might it redesign its facilities, its services, its public outreach to become a recognized and utilized community asset. It's a very useful airport. I think we could do a lot with it. And I think there's maybe not enough being done right now, and that's why we're able to nitpick at some of its flaws. But it's got a lot of potential. It's a real asset for the community, greater than just Longmont, Northern Colorado as a whole. And we can measure that performance. And really, we need to think, how can we really increase the local engagement and maybe bring a brighter light of public perception of its actual value? So I ask you to ask City Council, let's not maybe focus on and nitpick on what we could do here or there, or what's good or what's bad, but can we really reevaluate and recognize the true value and true potential of this airport? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Go ahead. And then we do have a second public invited to be heard toward the end.
Hello, Steve Hoffman from Estes Park. Take care of the airport. We don't have ours anymore. Went away a long time ago. Recommend no on landing fees. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Go ahead.
Hi there. Excuse me. William Dodge, 319 Fifth Avenue here in Longmont. I just wanted to share quickly another perspective of another student pilot. Growing up lower middle class in Centennial, Colorado, was never a thought in my mind that it could be a possibility for me to become a pilot. And then when I started to reconsider that it could be an actual possibility, I started to chase my dream. Now, as a newly certificated commercial pilot, I owe Longmont Airport a significant amount of my training as being an integral part of my training. I think landing fees would have hindered my progress in becoming an airline pilot, and if noise is the main issue of the landing fees, then I don't think that the landing fees are going to do anything about that, unfortunately. I think tolerating noise is kind of an investment in our future in air travel, because as it's stated before, generations of airline pilots have been training out of this airport, my mentor being one of them, who recently retired from a big airline last year. And so I hope to have that goal, and I hope that my children and their children have the opportunity to train out of this airport as well. Because it was I can't express how integral this airport was in my training and the specific way that we train. And our facility is out of Rocky Mountain Metro, and them being critically understaffed, our training there is severely limited. And so we rely on airports like this to learn how to do safe operations, and to learn how to be courteous, and to learn how to be good airmen and members of our community, and how we can serve our community by moving on to the big airlines and providing that service later down the road. So I'm not in favor of the landing fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call. Seeing no one else, we'll close the public invited to be heard. We need to approve minutes from August 14th and September 11th. And I don't know, did anybody have notes? Okay, Tara?
On the September minutes, my name was left off because I was also not here for the meeting. Yeah, September.
Thank you. And then on, my printer died right as I was printing these last pages. On the, make sure I'm on the right thing. Nope, that doesn't look like the right month. I have a few, it's just grammatical stuff, and not critical. It was, okay, stand by page 2. Okay, it was the August 14th minutes, page 2, line 9, should say deficiency. Line 12, there are no updates. Page 4, line 22. Provide, I think instead of promote. And then page 5, line 6. Requests, and I don't even see where this, I'm afraid I didn't have my printed copies to refer to. So it's mostly just small grammatical. Otherwise, did anybody else see anything of substance in the minutes that needs to be adjusted? Thank you. I move to, oh, could I have a motion to pass the minutes, please?
Your mic is on now.
Oh, I'll make a motion for the minutes.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Perfect. The minutes for the 14th and the 11th are passed as read. Next up is updates from our airport manager.
Hi, Levi Brown, Airport Manager. I do have a few quick updates for you, and then we will have a presentation on airport financials. But I did have a couple updates to add prior to that, just a few. Wanted to update everybody on the crack seal project out on the main apron on the ramp out there. We're continuing to deal with legal regarding that. Not a lot of updates, not a lot of movement at the moment. We're hoping to see some movement on that, start to get into construction in spring now. It's kind of getting to the point where it's too late this fall to kind of get things out there. So hopefully this spring we'll move through the legal process with the individuals involved, and we will be getting a new contractor to finish that work. So any questions on that at the moment? Good? Righty. The next thing, if there's no questions on that, one other item I have, we'll be doing CIP meetings at the end of the month. I was planning on speaking more about that at the last meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't have a quorum at. Not a lot of huge surprises going to come from that meeting. We're progressing pretty much forward with the same CIP that we've been talking about, of course, with the addition of unleaded fuel transition. So I'll be working with CDOT and with the FAA to see where we can start planning and getting some room reserved for unleaded fuel transitions in that CIP. Any particular questions on that?
So say the last part again. You're going to get what reserved?
So some space in our CIP, if you will, in our allotted money where we can start working in dollars for an unleaded fuel transition.
So the question would be physical space.
Yeah, well, in the schedule, yes, or a money space, if you will. The way the CIP works, of course, as a reminder for everyone else, is the state, the federal government allocates us entitlement dollars that we can use in an airport. Of course, one of the big catches with that is that they get a big say on what those entitlement dollars are used for. So I'll be making some requests, and we'll be refining some, here and there little things. And one of the big items is the unleaded fuel transition.
So Levi, does this indicate a separate pumping facility that will be available? Because we do have MoGas, as on the field right now.
Yeah, we do have an unleaded option on the fuel already. This is mostly relating back to the House Bill 1235 requirement that went through Colorado last year, which says we need to make that transition by 2030. So this will be, when we have that discussion, it'll be regarding that. But yes, you are correct. We already do have MoGas and unleaded fuel option on the field.
Will we be pursuing a tank?
Yes.
Okay.
So as we've spoken about it at kind of other meetings, the current low lead tank that we do have, is an underground tank, it is reaching pretty close to the end of its useful life to begin with. So what better opportunity to plan for its transition than as we make the transition, hopefully to unleaded fuel here in the near future. Yep. Any other questions on that? All right, with that, that's the big updates that I have before we start this long information item list. So the first thing we're going to go over is airport financials, and Jennifer has a presentation about that.
Hello, Chair Jordan and the rest of Airport Advisory Board. My name is Sandy Cedar. It's my first time at the Airport Advisory Board, but I'm a big fan. I wanted to introduce myself, and we're going to kind of walk through these info items together. So we're going to tag team. We have a whole team of staff here to try to work through all of these different issues and make sure that we're clear about what's happening. I am Assistant City Manager with the Shared Services.
Go ahead and put it back on. I'm sorry.
Oh,
there
no,
we go.
No problem. And over the last 6 months, both Levi's supervisor and his supervisor both retired, so I'm just kind of helping out with some of these transition issues, and then eventually we'll move back into external services. But for tonight, we have that whole list of information items. We're going to start with the financials because certainly one of the things that we're looking at when we're talking about landing fees, they're all kind of related. Landing fees cannot be implemented for noise mitigation. Landing fees can only be implemented for revenue generation in order to fund operations and capital at the airport specifically. So we thought it probably makes sense as part of the financials to kind of do a little level setting. Like, here's what it actually looks like. You receive, or you will be receiving, and I think you have on your desk, the latest expenditures and revenues from the airport. Obviously, you see the budget every year. What we've realized is that there are a couple things that are probably missing. Many people, even in Public Invited to be Heard, have mentioned about, that we could invest in the airport. We could make the airport even better. The revenue picture doesn't show that today. It barely shows the capital and maintenance being paid by the leases that are out there today. So we're going to walk through what does this look like as a beginning point, and that's the financials piece, and then we'll give you a bunch of different options to take a look at with respect to landing fees. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer to kind of walk through it with you.
Where did it go? I'm trying to find my file. Hold on real quick.
It's there somewhere.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Weinock. I am the business analyst for external services, and one of the divisions that I support is the airport. What you see up here, this is what I send Levi every month, showing the operating budget. So at the very top, it's personnel, and then the middle, it's operating. So just kind of gives you a glimpse of where we are in October. The spreadsheet in your packet was for July. So in the handout, you have numbers from today. Do you want me to go over anything specific, or do you have any questions?
We'll start with questions.
Okay.
So what I'm holding here is July's data or today's
Yes, you were, can I see that
you see
is
from there?
today's, yeah, that's today's data.
data? Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
today's numbers.
You guys are going to add this to the packets and everything, right?
Can you expand a little bit on the CIP project and what that encompasses?
Yeah.
Anything?
So what's the specific? Is there a specific line item we're looking at here?
We're under operating and maintenance or CIP.
So I can't see it.
I know, I don't know, let's see.
It just says CIP project, but nothing's broken down specifically.
What?
If you can find
It's the last item on the second page.
last item on the second page.
Oh, I haven't gotten to the second page yet.
Oh.
I think
But
I
I
got,
c-
I
I
think
can
I
get
got
to
the
that
old
now.
second page on mine here.
Well, what I went ahead and did is I wanted to show you also the revenues. So that's on the second page. Revenues and expenses. So you'll see we received revenue for the fuel tax refund.
The charges for services includes money from the cell tower, FBO lease, ramp fees, and public permits. Interest miscellaneous includes hangar leases, and then grants and donations, and then yes, operating and maintenance and CIP projects.
Okay. Yeah, so CIP project is the capital improvement project. So that's without getting details, seeing the exact. That's the things that were like the ramp project and stuff like that. Yeah.
Jennifer, why don't you pull up your other spreadsheet? So I think this is the monthly. What you're seeing is kind of the monthly checkbook for the airport, what the expenditures are with comparison to the budget, and how the revenues are flowing in and out. I think it's Levi's intention now to go ahead and add those to every set of board packets so that you have an idea of what's happening at the airport. And then, Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and go through this piece, and then we'll go ahead and start talking about the pro forma?
So just pretty much what I said, what the revenues include, fuel tax refund, charges for services. Oh, I see. I got you. Interest, miscellaneous, grants and donations, and then the expenses, operating and maintenance, and the CIP projects. So as you can see, revenues minus expenses, we're at $39,000 available as of yesterday's numbers.
Thank you.
Is that something else you'd like in the packet, to include revenues also, or just the expense piece?
The revenue would be helpful.
Okay. Okay. So then, next item, we were tasked to look at landing fees.
And before we jump into the different options for landing fees, part of this was taking a look at a pro forma over 5 years of what happens at the airport over time. So the first thing that Jennifer is going to show you is what does that look like without doing anything? Like there's no changes. What you're seeing when you look at the airport's budget, you're seeing 1 year of time. But what does that look like when you're including all of the CIP information, and what does it look like over a series of years? The other thing that in kind of preparing this, we talked about with City Manager Harold Dominguez was also adding things like a 90-day reserve policy, which the airport enterprise currently does not have, as well as really looking at what is realistic for capital over a 10-year or a 7-year period. So, Jennifer, if you don't mind going ahead and kind of going through, this is what it looks like if you build out the airport budget over a long period of time so that you have an idea what happens to the fund balance. So if you think of the airport as a giant checkbook, what happens as prices increase, revenues increase, and what happens to the ending working capital kind of in your savings account? So go ahead, Jennifer. Why don't you walk them through what this is saying first?
Before you start, Jennifer, I've got Mr. Popkin would like to speak. You're number 9, right?
We'll find out.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, I see a lot of people looking at the TV and their papers on their desk. And for the board members, I just wanted to let you know, if you push the button in the middle under your monitor, you can actually see the TV view on your screen. So just wanted to provide a little courtesy direction there.
Thank you, Levi. Just said, ooh, a pro tip. Right, because it's kind of detailed. It's pretty small.
And did anybody on the board have questions before we moved into this next section?
I did.
Okay. Oh, I did it again. I hit the wrong button. There we go. No, hit your button again. Stand by.
Oh.
There you go.
How about now? Okay, so I don't want to take us too far off track, but I'm just trying to understand what do the financials look like at the airport without grants and donations? Just kind of like, what's our operating revenue look like without external taxpayer grants and donations? And the donations could be taxpayer funded or not, I don't know.
Right.
Do we have that view?
Yes, I have the fund statement up, and so that is showing no grants or donations in that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, and this is the fund statement that was proposed to council a couple months ago. So again, you have the revenues like we went over. And then the operating and maintenance, and I don't have anything down for grants and donations.
Okay, great. So that's the 43,553 negative that comes to without grants and donations?
Yeah.
Well, the negative is what you're pulling from your fund
Oh,
balance.
right.
So think of it as a bank account, right? And so you have your bank account, and let's say you have some savings in it. When your revenues and your expenditures don't match, you got to get into your bank account to be able to pull some out of the fund. So what you see in this pro forma is you see the revenues as estimated today. You see the expenditures as estimated today. And what you see underneath that is that you're going to pull a little bit more out of your savings account each year. The red underneath there is the fund balance for the airport fund. And you're just pulling a little extra every year in order to make sure that you can pay for your bills. Over time, that's not particularly sustainable.
Okay. And where does that come from each year, those red numbers?
That's coming from the fund balance of the airport fund itself. So there's already kind of a savings account in the airport fund, and that's what this red piece is coming out of.
Okay.
The other thing that's important to note in this pro forma is that there's no accounting for the match for capital improvement projects. Is that right on this one? Yeah. And so that additionally comes out of the fund balance when they pop up. So fortunately, the matches are very small in percentage from the FAA, but there still is a required match that is not estimated in this pro forma. But we'll show you what it looks like in a minute. There's more to come.
So the fund is funded by grants and donations also, ultimately. I see grants and donations feeding into that fund. Is that right?
Certainly on the CIP side with the FAA grants particularly, I don't believe that we're planning on donations as a revenue source. That's not something we usually rely on. And in fact, we don't rely on FAA grants until we receive them, which is what makes the airport financial planning kind of difficult.
Right.
Because the FAA may be planning to give a $300,000 grant. We can't show it until they actually give it to us. And so we're not able to really plan very well for it. But one of the things that we can do is if we look at the CIP that Levi is putting together, we can figure out what the 5% match would be and start to build that into the airport kind of planning, budget planning, if that helps.
And what would be the top two donors under donations?
I don't have any idea. Who donates to the airport?
I don't believe there.
Are you talking?
It says grants and donations, big numbers.
So it really means grants, is what.
Right.
Okay.
This is just what comes out of our software system.
Oh, yeah.
And we
that's
just
true.
leave it like that.
Thank you.
That's
No
true.
donations right now.
We also have a grants and donations line in the city manager's office budget, but I promise you, nobody donates to it.
That's got a while ago. Wow. Thank you.
Okay. So as Sandy said, it looks like we're this is the 10-year outlook, and we are dipping into that savings account.
Board Member Shook had a question.
Hi. On the revenue side, you have miscellaneous income. The actual is 474, and then available 4,800. What is the miscellaneous income from?
So the miscellaneous income is from hangar leases.
Okay, hangar leases. And then the grants, the budget is 493. Was that what was approved and the city got or the airport got?
That is what we were budgeting.
Okay.
That we would get.
And the actual is only 111 that
Correct.
you actually got.
Yes.
So far.
Okay. But it shows available 382,000.
Sorry, Jennifer, I think that is a grant we received because otherwise we wouldn't have appropriated it into revenues, right, Sandra?
Right.
Okay.
Hi, I'm going to jump in. My name's Sandra Cifuentes. I'm the City of Longmont Budget Manager, and I'm just here for support. So what you're seeing on the screen, particularly in the grants and donations, these are grants that were awarded in 2025 that we've appropriated. So the total amount for 25 is 493, and so far through yesterday, we've received 113 of that. Some of these grants are reimbursement grants, so we have to spend the funding first and then request reimbursement, and the funding for that comes later. The amount you see in the available, it's really just the difference between the grant and how much we've received. So we have yet to receive 382,000 of that grant.
All right. And then on the expense side, operating and maintenance, can you explain? I understand the budget. I understand the actual. I don't understand what they were for.
Yeah, so charges for services are cell tower revenue that we receive, the FBO lease, ramp fees, and public permits. So
Yeah.
that includes the food truck and the jump fees.
Okay, I've
think
got
he's
that
asking about
on
the
the revenue.
expenditures,
I'm
right.
thinking, I'm looking at the expenses of operating and maintenance.
So that would include the operating and maintenance from this.
That's
Yeah.
correct, yeah. So what, the total of operating and maintenance, that's composed of salaries, so personnel costs. It also includes consumables, so supplies, training, everything you see on that other report, that's what makes up that total operating and maintenance budget.
And that includes everything from Levi's salary to the mowing contract to the repairs to, all of those different things. The other thing to know when you're thinking of the balance sheet is as the FAA has given money to the airport and Levi spends it, it shows up in here also. So it shows up on the expenditure side for whatever capital project as well as the revenue side. This particular set, those are the capital on the bottom. I think somebody else asked about the capital on the bottom. But these areas, right, everything from, dues and subscriptions and travel, but it's mostly, as you can see, repair and maintenance and contracted services at the airport.
It just seems to me that if we're running at a very low balance, we have a lot of this income, why spend it? Things can hold off. We've talked about different projects that we're going to hold off till next year or what have you. That significantly changes the grand total. I mean, anyway, just.
We can certainly get into more details about what the actual expenditures are I don't think I have them pulled up right now, like what all the POs were for, but I certainly, a lot of it is the contracted services for everything from snow plowing to, the crack sealing contract that we're not going to talk about, and, mowing and all these
It's
other things.
also,
It's upkeep of the airport.
The porta potties, cleaning.
Mhm.
Cleaning.
Yep.
Yeah. And we could bring you a list of POs if you'd like to see that in a future meeting.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I'd like to see it a little more defined.
Okay.
It's, a lot of these line items are general and probably things are lumped into it. Anyway, just my thought.
We can bring more detail.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you for being here to provide this information. I'm the newest member of the board, so I might get into the weeds a little bit, but administrative management services, what does that encompass?
That is the ATF fee. That's the 50%.
That's the administrative transfer fee that is paid to, so everyone you see here that's helping at this meeting is a general fund employee except for Levi. He's the enterprise, your enterprise funded employee. So at the end of the year, we calculate how much time we have spent on the airport, and a year in arrears, that amount is then charged back to the airport. The city council a few years ago made a policy that says that they won't charge 100% of those administrative transfer fees, only 50%, And we'll show you kind of what that looks like if you were to move that to 100% so that the airport is completely self-sufficient. But right now, the city's financial policy says that the airport will pay 50% of the time that the rest of the general fund spends supporting the airport. So you see us right now, but you also need to consider people like payroll and HR and risk management and communications, everyone who's doing very little amounts for the airport. It all adds up to this administrative transfer fee. This is 50% of that.
Okay, so what's in the budget is 50%.
Yes.
And then fleet lease operating and replacement, do we lease? I didn't realize we leased any operating equipment.
I don't believe we have any leases outstanding, right? So the way the fleet fund works, so I am in charge of the fleet fund all the time. The way that the fleet fund works is that any vehicles that are purchased by the city for the airport are owned by the fleet fund. So the fleet fund purchases the vehicle first, and then essentially gets money back from the airport year over year to pay for that vehicle, whatever the maintenance and O&M were for that vehicle. Exactly. So if we gave it an oil change, then we're going to charge you for an oil change. In addition, we also collect a separate second amount in order to replace the vehicle once it's reached its useful life. So one of those charges is for fleet O&M, the operating and maintenance, the oil changes and the tires and such. And the other one is the fleet lease rate, because essentially the airport, in fact, all of the enterprises lease their vehicles from the fleet fund. And so the lease rate is the amount that you're paying on those vehicles. I think it's just one vehicle, right, for you? Just one that you're paying year over year, so that at the end of the useful life, which is usually for, trucks and vehicles, we're usually talking, 7 or 8 years. At the end of that useful life, we've now saved up enough money to buy its replacement.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I have was, not being on the board for very long, have we exhausted all measures of generating revenue at the airport? Like, have we incentivized growth? Do we have better leases, better lease rates? Have we attracted more development at the airport? Because there is a lot of need for hangars throughout Colorado, and we have space on the airport to put them. And I know you're not exactly in the real estate business, in the hangar building business, but public-private partnerships. Fort Collins just built a ton of hangars up there. They're very expensive, and the airport is benefiting from that. I came from California. A tiny little airport in California owned tons of hangars, and they had revenue from being able to rent out their hangars. So, we talk about adding landing fees to generate revenue, and we haven't gone through the presentation, so I'll withhold those types of comments, but about the landing fees. But what are we doing to incentivize growth and bring in money at the airport? Because from what I've heard about landing fees, I don't necessarily think that it's going to dig us out of the hole that I feel like is being presented to us.
Thank you. Okay, you want to give it a shot?
So there's much of that we have been working on. One of the things we're continuing to move forward. This is potentially opening up land to do some development on. So we're progressing forward through that. We got our drainage study done. So there will be, as we're progressing forward with hopefully opening some of that up. And one of the things that we'll actually brief a little bit later is that we are looking at modernizing the leases too. So there are things that yes, indeed, that the airport is focusing on, and we will be turning our attention to.
But let me add one other piece to that. Let me add one other piece to that. The city council would like to know your ideas for revenue generation, because this is their problem, essentially, around the expenditures and trying to work through how do you build the airport to be better. Currently, the methodology is that you all own the land, and so you lease out the land, and other people buy and construct their hangars, and so basically you're just doing land leases. If you decided to change that methodology, that may be something that you'd want to consider offering as a recommendation to the city council. But I certainly heard a lot of people in public invited to be heard saying this isn't the way to raise revenue. I would love to hear just as many ideas on how to raise revenue. We did work with our economic partners at the Longmont Economic Development Partnership to ask them about some of our hangar leases, because like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe modernizing the hangar leases, which you'll hear about in another item. But certainly she had some ideas also that she wanted to share around development and growth, but we would love to hear ideas people have around revenue generation at the airport.
Yeah, no, I think I think the community wants it as well. I mean, I've heard that tonight for sure. I had one more thing, but I forgot, so I'll let you go on.
I think that's all the questions. If we can go to the next item, thank you.
Okay, so landing fees.
Landing fees.
Landing fees.
Yes.
So we were, again, tasked to look at landing fees, and we've already gone through this worksheet. This other fund statement I wanted to show you, this is including the 50% ATF or administrative transfer fee that we're already paying, but it also includes the grant matches. This city matches for any of the grants that we may get.
So I asked Jennifer, okay, so what if we did budget for those matches? We understand we can't budget for the grant itself because there's no guarantee that we get the grants, but what if we budgeted the match out of the airport fund? What does that make the airport fund look like? And so she put this information together, and it's a little bit of a different look than just drawing out of the savings account. What it shows, and the red in this particular chart shows that by, what is that, 2029?
2029, yeah.
That at 2029, now you're actually working at a deficit. You've run out of your fund balance, and so you're working at a deficit at this point. And so there does need to be some sort of change to be able to maintain the capital. And this capital program is just maintenance. This is not building new anythings or making things better or sprucing things up. This is basically just keeping things safe and maintained. Is that right, Levi? That's your capital. Your capital program is based on maintenance, as most of our capital programs are. So we wanted for you to see this updated performance. The City Council has not seen this one yet. They will on Tuesday. But we wanted for you to see this is what this is looking like over time then, once you put the capital back in.
Well, and we also added the 5% increase in O&M because that was an ask from Harold and Teresa. So along with the, so that and the city matches, you can see that by 2029, we are in the red.
And some of those assumptions have changed. Certainly on the fleet side, we've seen the same thing where if we did an escalation clause of 3% year over year, that seemed to cover expenditure increases. But you all know by just going to the grocery store or going out to buy pretty much anything, 3% is not what things have changed as far as cost increase. And so Harold did ask us to update both the fleet side and the airport fund to reflect a 5% year over year increase in just what things cost.
So I would question then back to the fleet operating, that it's $18,000 a year to maintain a brand new vehicle. That doesn't seem plausible. Even tires and all the oil in the world. I don't know why that number's so high. That's back to the last item. But I find this a tough set of numbers to look at when there's no grants to offset what we're talking about there. So you're pulling numbers out of the air as to what we would expect to be our portion of a grant when we have no idea how much that grant's going to be, and that 5% is a percentage of what we get. So if we get $100, it's $5 if we get 100,000. So how did you come up with those numbers?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything that you're seeing, other than this year's expenditures and budget, is conjecture, right? Everything that you're seeing is an estimate based on a set of assumptions. So in this case, the set of assumptions is the 10-year CIP plan that Levi puts together and how much we think we will get in grants in each of those years. And so then we take 5% of what that is. You're right, we haven't been given anything yet. And we won't be able to update the expenditures until we are. But you are correct that, I mean, we're making lots of assumptions on how much we think we'll get and therefore how much we think we'll need to match. We're making assumptions on the fact that the economy continues to build and increase at a 5% rate. The fleet fund, the fleet charges are based on a whole bunch of things. But that includes, I think that number includes replacement and O&M, right? Oh, sorry, not in this one, the other
Oh.
one.
The one that I was just in?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to add to that is that, as the public comment was made, we are supposed to take grants. That's how,
Yes.
that is
We want you
how
to.
airports are funded. That's
Yes.
how I-25 gets paid for. I don't pay for I-25, nor does anybody else directly, but we pay for it very indirectly through all kinds of taxes at the fuel pump, which is how we pay, the pilots pay into the fund that pays for those grants. So I would love to see us be able to write and apply to and get the grants we need for the fuel tank removal, the new fuel tanks. Our apron and everything is going to be good when that's finished, but our runway is solid as a rock. And development grants, potentially like for the FBO. So we really want to be applying for grants. That is money that we've already paid into a system that is designed for us to take it back out. And it's, again, part of the airport improvement fund. And so I do like to see the idea that we're going to be getting them. What is the city going to be able to do to help us apply for those grants and win those grants? Because that's the challenge. These numbers are for naught if we can't win the grants. And so that's really, I think, where we're looking for that help. I've been on the board almost 10 years total, and we've asked for a grant writer for a long time. So that would be a request for an expense to have a grant writer part-time or somebody to assist with writing those grants so that we can get those funds back out and back into our airport. So I appreciate that it's in there, but that's a funny number to try to get your head around when we have no idea what to expect.
It's going to be 6 months so far.
And absolutely correct. And that's something that, I'll always pursue, is applying for as many grants as I possibly can. And there's many that we've applied to here that we haven't necessarily been accepted for, unfortunately. But yes, you're absolutely correct.
We certainly do have folks that can do grant support for Levi if we're finding that we're just not getting the grants that we're hoping for. The FAA does plan to give us grants, so that's great too. And I hope that they continue that practice as part of this. And we're assuming that they will. Yeah.
Just for the record, I'll add that there was a 501c3 created, probably 10 years ago now, 8 to 10 years ago, that we created at the airport to help to donate. So to your question about donations, legacy donations could have come from that account, and then that account has been used to do things that we didn't ask the airport to do, like handicap access between the parking area next to the FBO out onto the ramp. And our pilots used the money to buy the concrete and dug it up and created an ADA access at the airport. So we do have a 501c3 that we have developed and continue to use. We haven't been called on for it, so we've been using it for scholarships. And I do sit on that board, obviously. So that is also there with the intent to be able to make a contribution to help with that 5%. So there is definite interest, and again, it's being able to see these financials and to be able to see the train as it comes down the track and do our fundraising events to fill that fund to help out. So there is a lot of interest and ability for pilots on the field to contribute directly to that 5% match that we have to pay as the city.
That's excellent.
Friends of Vance Brand Airport, and it's also who we use for the air show. And like I said, we haven't needed to participate, but it's there, ready, stood up, and current. So we're ready, willing, and able.
Thank you. I certainly recognize the sticker shock of this as well. So certainly we've been working on these numbers for weeks, so we've seen them and we've been, refining them and working through them. It just felt like there wasn't the whole picture for people to see and understand, which is why we wanted to present you the financials first before we talked about landing fees. We're going to present to you several options for landing fee proposals that we've put together, and you'll be able to see what the revenue impact looks like for each of those proposals. In addition, it's not the whole picture, I think, as you mentioned, because we also have direction from the City Council to bring you back a new leasing policy. And so we're hoping that we are going to bring you back a leasing policy that incents additional investment in the airport. We just don't have any hard numbers to be able to associate with that at this point. So it's not just that we're saying, okay, you need to raise this much money via landing fees. It is the whole picture, but we wanted to show you a few different scenarios. And considering that landing fees must be applied based on revenue shortfall, we wanted to give you the revenue picture first, show you the different options. I believe the Airport Advisory Board actually already sent the City Council a recommendation, and it felt like, at least to me, that you should see the financials and then decide whether that's still the recommendation you want to make to the City Council tonight. Or if there's something else that you wanted to adjust. It seemed unfair to say you need to provide us a recommendation without understanding the financial impacts of every single option.
Sorry, getting all of this information. We got part of it in the packet and part of it tonight. So one other question I have for you that I'm, again, going to nitpick. Professional and contracted services, is that including like your mowing and things like that? Or is that under something different?
Yeah, that's essentially anything like that. So mowing, snow removal, or let's say we need to have an independent engineer to come in and look at a specific pipe or something like that. So any professional contracted service that we need to have work done for.
Outside attorney fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'll see, I did pull those numbers for the POs. So
Okay.
you can see the restroom cleaning, prairie dog control, cleaning services.
What are we cleaning? Sorry.
The office.
And the restrooms.
And the restrooms.
Levi's
yes.
office and the restrooms.
Yeah.
Okay. And and software, $8,000. What is our software expense?
Is it the AMS?
Yeah.
That was like this year charge, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it's the monitoring system.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do this at home where I know I'm going to be short and I try to readjust my home budget. Have we gone through this, Levi, and tried to pick some things apart and say, you know what, maybe I don't need this year or whatever?
The budgeting, yes, the budgeting process is very detailed, as present individuals can attest to.
So one of the things that the budget team does, that Sandra and her budget team does, is they go through and they look at the expenditures per the budget that has been over the last few years, and they will actually ask staff to cut things out of their budgets if they don't feel that it's needed. So.
Right. So we do an annual review of different accounts, different funds. We also ask departments to look at their budget, see trends, where can we save money? Do we need to reallocate our budget? Every department starts with a base budget, and then if they need additional, they do need to submit budget requests and a justification for the new service that we're asking for. So they do look at their budgets annually. They do reallocate, and then any additional funding that we need to add is submitted to the city manager through a budget request, and it does go through an approval process before it gets added to the budget.
Okay, thank you. And I think this just goes back to, from what I understand, airports are not supposed to be self-sufficient. They rely on grants and external funding. The FAA is a huge supporter of giving airports money. And if Erie is making money hand over fist, why are we not doing that? And what can we learn from Erie? What can we take away? Because they don't have landing fees. They don't have a budget shortfall. And how can we improve what we're doing so that people don't have to get hit with a fee?
Okay, the first thing is FAA is very, very serious about airports being self-sufficient. In fact, that's actually one of the grant assurances that we have to sign when we take any grant money. We actually promise to be as self-sufficient as we possibly can, so we actually have to make that promise to them. Erie's financials is going to be a really odd thing to kind of break down. The Erie Airport itself, I want to say, owns, I think, 6 port-to-port hangars. The rest of everything on that airfield is through the fence agreements. So we're looking at a vastly different model than we're looking at here. at Longmont. We're getting to apples and oranges here, is the way I'd put it. Through the fence agreement is access to an airport via private property.
I think we used to have a through the fence with Amgen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of it at Broomfield. There's a lot of that at Broomfield.
I do want to get to the options so that you can see what each of those look like. I recognize that we did not put this information in the packet, partially because once you start seeing the options, there was no way we could explain it in the packet. We wanted for you to be able to see it. We're happy to provide this afterwards so that you can play with it as well. But it felt like it was too complicated to just hand you and be like, okay, we need to walk through this with you. Why these numbers are different than what you are used to, what kind of assumptions that we have been making, what are the different options that you can look at. I do want to remind the board that at your May 8th meeting, you voted on a recommendation concerning potential imposition of landing fees at Vance Brand Airport. Your recommendation at the time was twofold. One was to not have landing fees. That was part of it. And then secondly, if the council decided to still have landing fees anyway, you laid out kind of some options. You laid out some options about aircraft that are over 9,000 pounds with a landing fee of $5 per 1,000 pounds. One option for all aircraft weights, so everybody being charged the $5 per 1,000 pounds. And airport tenant exemption, strongly talking about fixed base aircraft being exempted. And so we've provided all those options so you can see what it looks like on the pro forma. So if you're comfortable moving forward with that, we'd love to show you those.
Okay, so here.
Sorry, just one more question. Under ending working capital, you have in 2029 a deficit of 271. Does that take in account for future grants and things like that? It does take in?
It does, and let me lay it out one more time, and Sandra, maybe you can help me also. So the way this pro forma is set up is it's assuming that we still have to provide a 5% match for those grants. So we're assuming we're going to get the grant in the revenue side, we're going to spend it out in the expenditure side, so it doesn't show up in the pro forma, because we're assuming we're going to get the grant, we're going to spend the grant, and we're going to need to provide 5% match for it. So it does account for the grant, even though we don't know how much that particular grant may be at that time. But it's kind of nets out, right? We get the grant, we spend it.
Okay. Do you guys account for CPI increases every year?
That's the 5% increase that we've changed it from 3% to 5%.
Okay.
Yeah. And I hope that's not too conservative.
When you get the grant money, do you always spend it in that year?
No, various grants, various interesting things. For example, our ramp project is a CDOT grant, and there's no way we're going to be able to spend it all this year because it's extending on beyond to next year. There are, dates that's supposed to be closed out by, but honestly, we're in a situation where you're working with the entity you're getting it from. There tends to be open-endedness to that. So not necessarily, no, is the short answer.
And I also want to mention that this pro forma that you're looking at is not a reflection of any management or anything that you've had any information about. We have changed the assumptions. So the balanced budget shows that the revenues and the expenditures match each other, and that's true. That is still true. What doesn't get accounted for is the capital match that you need to be able to provide. So I don't want you to think that, oh my gosh, I've overspent, my cable bill, or my next light bill because I didn't have enough money. Your revenues and your expenditures are okay. It is adding in the capital grant match that we've just been paying out of basically the piggy bank. And so instead of just paying it out of the piggy bank, actually budgeting for it and laying it in. The other assumption we did change was that CPI index going from 3% to 5% because that's what we're seeing more regularly. So I recognize the sticker shock of looking at this kind of a document, and I want you to know that it doesn't change the fact that your revenues and your expenditures are pretty much paying for themselves. It is things like the rest of the admin transfer fee, the 50% of the admin transfer fee. It is the capital matches that are not included. It is now this new CPI piece that we are updating our this pro forma for you so that you can see those eventualities and see what that's going to look like so that we don't get in trouble down the road.
Yeah, because I would note that we're 80% through the year and we've spent 70% of the budget.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's exactly the stuff that I'm looking for.
Yeah, so
and
that 10%
indicates-
is factored in?
It goes right back to the fund. So when Levi underspends the budget, which it sounds like he will, when he does, then that money, because the airport fund is its own enterprise, just goes back into the airport fund and then can be reallocated. That's why you see the ending working capital becomes the beginning working capital of the next year in this fund statement. So your expenditures are on par. There's nothing that's happening from a management perspective that is awry. We are just realizing that we need to add in some additional expenses that have not been accounted for in the past. Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions? I cleared the mics, but is that it? Okay. We are ready.
Okay. All right. We have a few options. When we received your recommendation of 9,000 pounds, the data that we received isn't per 1,000 pounds. So we had to kind of rework it because the data that we get is 12,500 pounds up to 19,999 and then under, yeah. So that's kind of what we did on here. You'll see all these different options. We have 12,500 pounds, and then we did take the $5 per 1,000 that you guys had recommended. We have a no exemption, hangar lease at 50%, and then hangar lease exempt. We also have a uniform fee of $5 per 1,000 pounds, no exemption, 50% fee waiver, and lease exempt. And then we have the current proposed fee with 100% ATF, no exceptions, 100% ATF hangar lease exceptions, and then 50% no exemptions, and 50% hangar lease exempt. So I could go through all of these just so you guys can see how it changes.
Or if there's one you'd like to look at, to start with. It might be good to see the very first one, which is the recommendation that you gave, just to see what it does to the pro forma. Yeah, I heard a yeah.
Which
Okay.
one was that?
Why don't you do that? Yeah, the $5.
Just wanted to jump in for a second here. So I think there's not just sticker shock here, but information inundation that's going on here, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that here.
Right.
And so, is there a scenario here that could serve as a decent base case reference that we could start with,
Yes.
and then work off there, just so that the board has a sense of like how do we reference this and contextualize it? That might be the clearest way to start for both the board and for the public. Thank you.
So, yeah, then let's start with the current proposed fee. So what this is we took the 7-year average of the contribution to and from the fund balance. And that doesn't include the 25% processing fee if we go to a company that does that. So you'll see here that
This is a flat fee. This is a flat fee for everybody.
Flat fee with 100% ATF, no exemptions. So as you can see, it's looking better throughout the 10 years.
So if you look at the pull from fund balance, so just to clarify this option, this is a flat fee every airplane would pay. And it doesn't include, there was a question about whether we'd be able to have people actually charged to this. Are there companies that actually do this work? And so we put out a request for information and found that there were 3 companies that responded to the request for information. One of those has just recently told us that they're not going to offer this service anymore. So there are at least 2 companies that are out there that are willing to do this for us. It's called a no-cost contract because they basically just take money off the top. So it doesn't affect the airport's expenditure budget. They have successfully implemented landing fees in other areas and on other airports. And so if this was the case, we would go back out and actually do an actual bid for that service. But essentially, what this first scenario shows is if every airplane that touched, that landed, touched, and left, paid a flat fee of, what is it, which one is this one?
This,
709 to be
$7.09.
exact.
$7.09. Again, there's a lot of assumptions here. That what would happen to the pro forma is that you would sometimes draw down from the fund balance, but you would sometimes add into the fund balance. So if you take a look at where Jennifer's pointing right now, sorry, down a little bit. Yep, right there. The contribution to your piggy bank sometimes is more money, and then sometimes you're pulling from the piggy bank. But overall, the bottom line of your ending fund balance is still positive. So if you were to make that recommendation to the city council, that's what the finances would look like. Now, a couple other assumptions. I heard a lot of folks in the audience say people wouldn't come here. This is assuming what the air traffic looks like today is what the air traffic would look like after implementation of landing fees. So if people did decide not to come to the airport anymore, that would change the assumptions. Certainly there's lots of things that would continue to change over time, but theoretically, if you charged $7 per landing, $7.09 per landing, this is what the pro forma then begins to look like and what your fund balance looks like.
Yeah, just two more clarifications here. So just as we go through this from a presentation standpoint, I think that was the most number of words to describe a number that I've ever heard. So just a process suggestion here. Can we be clear about like what's the fee level? This is the scenario. This is the impact on the budget. That would be, I think, very helpful for everyone. And I'm like seeing a lot of furrowed brows here. The second thing for when we say 100% or 50% of the ATF, that's referring to the administrative transfer fee that is general fund supporting airport staff, correct, or other operations. And the 100% scenario means the fees are covering all of that so that the general fund is not contributing to the
Yes.
there wouldn't be an ATF. Is that what that means?
That the airport is paying its full weight.
Full share of that.
Full share of the
So the general fund would be paying 0% in that case. And then the 50% under the current proposed fee is the current situation of the 50-50 split.
Yes.
Thank you.
and I apologize, I've been looking at this for almost a year. So to me, it's, yeah.
Just trying to clear the air.
No, I get it. And
I have a couple of questions and maybe some comments. The companies that responded to the ATP, what are they using for aircraft identification?
They were using the AD?
ADSB?
ADSB.
Yes.
And when we asked them if there were, any regulations were they using that today? Were there any regulations from the FAA that said that they couldn't? They said, no, there was no problem using the data in other airports. I know that's come up as a question. That was their response.
There's pending legislation that would forbid that. Now, pending legislation is like, these days, anything you want because nothing's moving. That said, I do follow a Senate Bill 2075, which forbids the use of ADSB information for any sort of revenue generation. And interestingly enough, those of you who are interested in sports betting, you can also bet on legislation. I noted that there's like a 14% chance that SB 2075 will get passed, according to what I read. So that's question number one. Let me kind of like meander here a little bit. How are these companies identifying who is pilot in command and therefore responsible for paying those bills, and how are they collecting?
They each presented different options for all of that. And in fact, there wasn't any single company that said they would just use one source of data either when identifying an aircraft. They said in some cases there were 3 or 4 options for how they would kind of triangulate where the plane was, who it belonged to, each of those pieces. And so there was also different options for payments. So in some cases, some of them put up a QR code so that when you landed at the airport, you could pay your fee right there like you do for parking. at different stadiums. Some of them talked about being able to charge afterwards, people being able to use credit cards, those kinds of things. As far as how they identified it, they all just said that they would be able to identify it to a place where they could then send either a bill or a charge. We didn't ask them necessarily how they were going to do those things. We just had them confirm that they could.
Yeah, the ADSB information is not going to identify a pilot in command. Say I loan my aircraft to you, and she does 3 touch and goes at Longmont. That billing and that recognition of my aircraft number
would probably come back to
indicate
you.
that I was pilot in command during those 3 landings, and therefore somebody would try to assess me a bill, which I would happily refuse. So I think there's a lot of stickiness associated with this kind of proposal. And those are just things that I see. You also ask for, facets that could provide additional revenue at the airport. I think a much more user-friendly lease for the FBO, which would encourage on-site mechanics, which we currently don't have, would generate not only revenue from the maintenance that's performed, but also tax revenue from parts that are sold into that. So that's one thing that could be considered. And enhancement of the facilities. If we had a full-time restaurant, that would generate some revenue from taxes also. So those are, ideas that we can use, we can think about, we can consider.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess since we're weighing in here, I might as well jump in too. So the city's airport is a city facility. So why should we not have pay-per-use for the airport when we have pay-for-use for other facilities like golf courses and rec centers? It's a nominal fee. We pay for use. And now I hear people say that, well, we already pay for hangars and we pay for fuel. But so do we give a pass for business owners in town that pay a lot of money in use taxes, property taxes, other taxes, just because they're doing business here? Do we give them a pass on city facilities like golf fees and rec centers? No, if you own a hangar, you pay for the hangar. If you got to buy gas, you buy gas. I don't think we should be expecting pass on other areas just because we're paying our way on other things. So I just want to advocate for pay per use like we do on all other city facilities. To me, it makes sense whether, I don't know what the fee is, but pay per use is what we do in these public facilities, whether it's a golf course, an airport, or a rec center. And just because you live here or you have a business there doesn't necessarily mean you have privileges. You're paying for all this stuff. Anyway, that's my 2 cents there.
I'll speak to that briefly. This is a national transportation system. It's not a golf course and it's not a rec center. So we're part of the complete interstate commerce system and national transportation. So our money does come from that fund. That is how it's to be paid for. And then we pay for our local facilities through all the fees and rents and things that we pay for, but especially at the pump. And I'll jump ahead and say that that's something that we haven't seen any analysis on, is increasing our fuel flowage fee. And again, to somebody else's point, bringing Mile High back and getting them back with their fuel flowage. He's still there, he's still based there, and for him to be able to fuel there certainly suits him better. We get all the skydiving activity, we might as well get the fuel flowage. So we haven't looked at that at all, and that's a pretty easy one considering how much fuel is dispensed, which I'll also point out right now, 36% of the fuel dispensed at our airport, 36.38% is no lead. So we're killing it on the no lead game, guys. And considering what the mandates are and what other airports are at, we're at almost 37% no lead. So why aren't we leveraging our fuel flowage fee and rates and charges? So I think that's where you're seeing us looking at it a little bit glassy-eyed, thinking there's so many other revenue sources that aren't being tapped in this set of presentations. Fuel flowage being the big one. We're at 0.06 cents, and a 1%, a 1 cent, 2 cent. We do buy a lot of gas, 90 and a 182, but that's a way to, you want us to pay our way, that's a way we can pay our way. And if I fuel up at Platte Valley, I'm still paying my way to Longmont by paying into the grants, because it all goes into that bucket. It doesn't matter where I pump gas in the state of Colorado or in the country, it's going back into that national fund. So again, just to be clear about the cycle of how the money is generated and brought back to our airport, I think there's other ways we can do it that will generate more income quickly. Landing fees we will be blacklisted. There are lists, they're being publicized. People are blacklisting airports for landing fees because they don't like getting a bill afterwards, and they don't like getting a bill to stop and buy gas. So don't hit them when they go to buy gas, or don't get them for stopping. Go ahead and get them at the pump, and we do have things that we can do at the pump. So that there are other ways we can explore. To the question of how else can we make money, there are other ways, and in addition to what Dan was proposing. I've got.
And Chairperson Jordan, I certainly would say that your recommendation to the council is yours. So whatever that entails is fine. If you want to look at other pieces, Levi had actually suggested that we do a study on the rates and charges for the airport overall. And I discouraged him to do that because the council has asked us particularly for this discussion. But your recommendation to them can incorporate additional ideas for revenue or anything that you'd like to share with them. That's what they're counting on from you.
Oh, all right. I'm not. Oh, yeah, no. I'll go, but he can go first. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I did a quick question with the, if you do go with the landing fees, how's the enforcement work? Because other people have kind of mentioned when they got up and spoke earlier that we'll just not pay it. Are they going to make it where you can't renew your pilot's license? I mean, when you get a toll from E470, you can't get license plates if you don't pay your toll, even though it is a private enterprise. So how does that work as far as collection and who does that and enforcement? Because if there's no enforcement, then nobody's going to pay it.
And enforcement's another kind of open-ended question. Of course, as we know, the authority for aviation is the Federal Aviation Regulation. So when it comes to items of enforcement when it comes to pilot licenses, they are the organization. So they're really the only ones that can do enforcement action in aviation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the airport's been around for 80 years on Tuesday, correct? And we are just now discussing a budget deficit. Is that what I'm understanding? And we're trying to fix it with landing fees. And it's also the same time that all the noise complainers have been popping up at City Council. So it just sounds like that we're trying to appease noise complainers instead of actually addressing budget deficit for an airport that's been in its location for 80 years. The other issue I have for this is, to Chairwoman Jordan's point, is we'll get blacklisted. So if we're already in a budget deficit, how are we going to make up for the fuel flowage fees that we're going to lose? How are we going to make up for the small businesses that are going to leave? How are we going to make up for telling Alexa, the flight deck girl, that she's not going to get as much business as she usually gets because her customers are not going to be flying in the summertime? I would like to see our city council and this board support the businesses in the community that uses the airport. And we do pay our way. I'm married to a pilot. We buy a lot of gas. We pay those taxes that go into funding airports. And as for arguments from people that say that we have to pay our fair share for people that come from other airports to use our runway, are we prepared to tell the folks who live in Berthoud that drive through Longmont on their way to work in Boulder that now they have to pay to use our roads in Longmont? Because that's the same analogy, in my opinion. Everybody pays fees and taxes through buying gas, through, like Chairwoman Melinda said, through the national transportation system. This isn't a golf course. This is where people actually go and use to get qualified to fly airplanes so that we can go to United and get on an airplane and go somewhere fun, to Disneyland. have you seen the fees that you pay on your airline tickets? We all pay into that. That all goes into airport funding. Again, I will point out that we have not addressed other ways to increase revenue at the airport. And I think before we even discuss landing fees, we need to talk about other ways to increase revenue at the airport. I did make a couple of phone calls today to the flight schools that use our runways and asked them what kind of impact landing fees would have on their small business, because these flight schools land at our airport and they buy gas. They have lunch at the flight deck grill. They come into Longmont and use our services. And these people said that they wouldn't come here anymore. It would be too much of a safety issue because they don't want to have to pay the landing fees. The tower at BJC is understaffed. Again, air traffic controllers at the moment aren't getting paid, so it's understaffed. They can't do touch and goes at BJC. They have to fly to somewhere else like Longmont. And if they can't come to Longmont because it's going to be too expensive for them, then they would go to Erie or they would go to Boulder, giving them that revenue. And it shows the community that we're not supportive of aviation. These people that use our flight schools are training the future pilots, and they need to be able to do touch and goes. And I would like to see our airport community open up and bring the community of Longmont into the airport and show our community just how great that our airport is. Another flight school said that they would completely leave. Actually, it was Aerosphere. He said he would leave. He'd be gone. He would take the jobs that he provides here in Longmont, 7 to 8 jobs with him, their fuel money, their hangar rent, their land tax money, all that would be gone. That's revenue that we're going to lose now. Another flight school said that they have always tried to be part of the solution and not the problem. They use our maintenance facilities. They use our fuel. They have been part of developing safe training areas at local airports. And their SOP is to not use Longmont if it's congested. They don't even come here. They tell all of their CFIs, don't go to Longmont if it's congested. And then they would consider entering into a Part 16 lawsuit if we implemented landing fees, because it would take away their use of the airport. And I specifically remember Sandy giving a presentation about the airport budget a couple weeks ago, and Harold made a kind of a weird comment, and I didn't follow up with it, but he was pretty concerned, it seemed, about the last Part 16 lawsuit that the city was in. And I don't think we have the money to do any more. And I'm really concerned that that's going to be an issue, in addition to losing pilots who just don't want to fly in here because of the landing fees. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Did your study include the special event fees? Looking at the list that you pulled down, I didn't see like a special event fee.
So a special event fee, that would be something that it's been tossed out in the past, but that's something that would be included in a new rates and charges study or review. Would be a special event.
Exactly, but that was in our proposal, the $200.
Yeah.
So you didn't do that? No? Okay.
Right. Well, I didn't, because any special event fee is part of our O&M.
That would be us charging a special event fee,
right,
specific to Sundance
so
Film Festival.
I guess, I guess UOPP. Yeah, that would just go straight into our operating. So I didn't spell it out specifically because to me, it was already included when we have those in our operating and maintenance.
So it's like a wash. You charge people to come in, and that's what it costs to host them? Yeah.
So that's not what that is. That would be an increased tie-down fee during a special event when there's a lot of congestion. So it would be, the tie-down fee right now is $40. It would be increasing that significantly, 200 and plus. And the reason for discussing that was we've got Sundance Film Festival for the next 10 years. And they will be coming here, and we will be lodging them and transferring them.
Okay.
So that was what that was. That was income increasing the ramp fee for a special event. We would also include potentially football games and other things that draw aircraft to the airport. And that's a model that Tuscaloosa, Alabama uses for football days.
You could certainly include that in the revised recommendation or keep the recommendation. I didn't include it because it doesn't feel like it's a consistent revenue source because the events come and go. If we found that Sundance, for example, as a great, awesome event, did yield a certain amount of revenue and did that year over year, then we could budget for it that way.
I mean, it's still a revenue source.
That's true.
You didn't study it.
That's true.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of fear and doubt and speculation on this. Yet there are, I think, hundreds of airports that do landing fees. So instead of speculating, could we speak with those airports and find out what their experience has been? I mean, did the sky fall, or what's been their kind of elasticity or variation on use, and how did they pull it out? And I think I'd like real data on that rather than more speculation, if you don't mind. Maybe we could do that call and find out what their data really shows with factual data.
Yeah, and that's, it varies from airport to airport. I communicate with many of those airports and talk with their managers, and almost more importantly than that, I talk with individuals that manage those accounts. So it's the short answer that it varies drastically from airport to airport. So to kind of put that in a kind of a chart system would be a little more difficult. It really does depend on the situation of each individual airport.
Okay, data, please.
That being said, I believe they're public airports, and so therefore their finances would also be public. So we could certainly find out how much revenue has been
Thank you,
generated
Sandy.
by those. Yeah.
To address that question, most airports that charge landing fees charge them for aircraft that are over 12,500 pounds. And that's pretty much the benchmark. GA, General Aviation airports that have implemented landing fees on smaller aircraft have uniformly failed. AOPA has produced studies on that. They're public, they're accessible. Malcolm previously gave us a couple of articles about 2 airports in particular that implemented landing fees, and I think the fee structure lasted a whopping 2 to 3 months. And then they abandoned them completely for the reasons that we've outlined tonight. People go elsewhere.
Okay, I'd like to see the data, please.
It's out there.
Okay, great.
Just Google it. It's out there. There's a lot of press, but I'll give it to Malcolm.
Yeah, the only thing I can add is that I have done it, Charles, and I will give you 4 airports. Rio Vista, Safford in Arizona, Capital City, and now, as of this month, Orlando has paused all landing fees. They found that it's done no good and actually has increased no bottom line to their stuff. It's just caused people to go elsewhere. So you can look that up, but that is 100% a fact. So airports are getting rid of their landing fees. That they have found that it has done nothing for their bottom line and it just caused people to leave, which is being shown. So by all means, call those airports and ask them why they got rid of their landing fees.
Okay, I'm just commenting that I think there's hundreds that do it, and you're citing 4,
There's
so.
not many. There's not hundreds. There's actually very few. More of them.
How many, I've heard, how many airports in the United States charge landing fees, general aviation?
The number is about 100.
I can speak for Colorado specifically because
In the United, that's all right. So this is what I'm saying. There's a lot of speculation, and I'd like facts, data, not, cherry picking or, 4 out of this. So I'm just looking for real data rather than all of this speculation. It would be really helpful to this conversation to bring some honesty and real data rather than opinion and speculation and maybe selective use of information. That's what I'm looking for.
Good. Over there. Did I just turn you off?
I think we can go and find that data. I think a lot of us have done that. I don't think that they are going to provide that to us because they're asking for the landing fees.
However we do it, that's great.
Yeah, google.com, it can be done.
Okay.
There's lots of information out there. I pulled a lot of it up today. There's not many airports that charge it. And if they do charge it, they are commercial airports that generate a whole lot more money than we do. I think what we need to do is figure out what the airports that don't charge landing fees are doing to generate the revenue, because there's a whole lot more of those out there than there are airports that charge landing fees to generate the revenue.
I'm just looking for a comprehensive set of facts.
And Madam Chair, I should also mention, the staff is agnostic on this. We are bringing this on behalf of the City Council. They're asking you for their recommendation. They've directed us to bring back landing fees, which will come back to them next Tuesday. And they're looking for a recommendation from the Airport Advisory Board. We had to move up the meeting. It was originally set for November 3rd, but we're missing a good chunk of the council on the 3rd, and so it's been moved up to this next Tuesday. So, yeah, I want to be clear that staff's not advocating for anything. We are here to provide as much information as we can. Sounds like there's a little more data that we could be providing, but they're looking for your recommendation. Yeah, I just want to be clear about that. We're not we're not advocates for any particular anything.
And to clarify, it's not going on Monday, November 3rd.
Correct. It's been moved
now
up to October 28th meeting.
So we have less than a week.
Yes.
Okay.
And I should also mention that the process for that is many-fold. So just as a reminder, and I'm sure I'm over inundating with too much information, but the City Council will look at an ordinance that establishes landing fees at the airport with no dollar amount associated with it. So that's the ordinance that they will look at this next Tuesday, is an ordinance that basically just establishes the landing fees in the city code. Then we have to update the rates and charges. That has to come back to Airport Advisory Board. Any changes to those rates and charges then have to be posted for 30 days. So it's not just a one-step thing. They will likely give us direction on first of all, whether they want to incorporate landing fees into the ordinance. That's what they'll be presented with. They'll be presented the same exact options and the same exact spreadsheets that you're seeing. And then they'll give us direction as to which direction they'd like for us to go as far as methodology. But it still has to come back to the Airport Advisory Board. It also has to go to the FAA before we even, in between all of that. So the council will look at it and decide if they want to move forward with a methodology. They're looking for a recommendation from the Airport Advisory Board. Then we take that to the FAA along with the saturated pattern policy, which was also requested to go to the FAA from the City Council. Then it comes back to the Airport Advisory Board to be incorporated in the rates and charges, and then back to City Council.
And then to undo landing fees, we take all that process and reverse it? Okay. Because we just watched Rio Vista in California do that in less than a year. They did all their proclamations. I've read them all. And then they rewound it because they lost so much money so quickly that they had to undo it.
I'm sorry, that's also a whole lot of information. I'm going to stop now.
My concern with the landing fees, I've read several articles from the Colorado Pilots Association, AOPA, and several others, and these organizations stand firm against the landing fees as an approach to introduce unnecessary costs, compromises safety, undermines the health of general aviation. The safety risks include pilots turning off their ADS-B if that's the tracking method that is used, and which and then it discourages training, and less practice leads to lesser skilled pilots. You know, you can, if there's someone in the pattern doing touch and goes, every time he touches down, he's going to get whacked. So is he going to get as close to the ground so he doesn't have to pay the fee, which could be a safety concern? And, you know, pilots are tightwads. They don't like to spend money if they don't have to. I don't think they're tightwads on their aircraft, but in general. As far as revenue generation, one of the ways I mentioned is every year the CPI increase. But what has been touched here is grants. And I think we need more grants written. There's a lot of money out there. And, just flying in states like Nebraska, out in the middle of cornfields, you'll see the most beautiful airport. Well, the farmers didn't buy that or pay for that. They got grant money. And, I think we're losing on thousands and tens of thousands. I remember when Mr. Popkins first joined the board, we had a discussion on grants, and he goes, I can't believe we're losing out on that. Other revenue generation, we live in the Rocky Mountains. Longmont could be a destination airport for general aviation. People that want to fly in, they're going to spend money in the city, from renting bikes, hiking, buying fuel, renting cars, going out to dinner, hotels. But the way Vance Brand looks right now, it's not a destination. So there needs to be some investment in it. How do you get that investment? A new FBO, that's number one. And a new building, the tenant and the building. And the city needs to help with that and not put up the roadblocks. There's several people who have tried, and the city just made it impossible. The South Side development, new hangars, make it easier and more affordable for developers to lease the ground. They're going to put the infrastructure in for you and make it with favorable terms. But when you lower the terms, a developer can't make any money. And if he's not going to make any money, and I'm a developer, or I was, I built 42 hangars in Monterey. I'm still managing them. And we started with a 40 and a 10. And then we built some more hangars, and they gave us 5 additional. I built a 500-unit self-storage property on Monterey Airport property with, again, another 50-year lease. So, the city can help with revenue generation by, not giving anything away. Even at 50 years, you put $5 million into, or $8 million into a project, you need more than 20 or 25 years to amortize it out. I've been there, I know. And so, my recommendation would be no fees and find other ways to support the airport.
Next, then, is the hangar lease charges. Is that our next item? Thank you.
We will want a recommendation at the end. I think you'll see it at the end of your agenda. Yeah, okay.
There'll be action item for it.
Action item,
Yes. Yes, so saving that for an action item here for the landing fees, we'll go ahead and switch to hangar lease changes really quick. We've talked about this briefly in the past and not a whole lot to share tonight. Just wanted to update people mostly that we're proceeding forward with that. We've got a really good draft with City Attorney's Office. No big details set on that one yet as far as rates. We've been talking about what might happen with rates and charges. I mean, maybe there'll be some more put into that. No other guidance has been given for that, lease terms, anything like that. We are looking potentially, to the point that you just made, making extra provisions in the lease that we haven't had in the past to make sure that investors are amortizing their investment and that that lease more accurately represents the investment that's being put into the airport. So that is being addressed in this new draft. When that new draft is out, we will be bringing that, of course, to the airport board. Any questions on that?
think we anticipate next month.
Yeah, we should be good on that. There was a short little conversation. Hey, can we get it done for this meeting? And we're like, oh my gosh, we've got so much else to work on. Let's prioritize the things that we got going on. Yeah.
So when you talk about, I know you haven't brought it to us, but I'm just asking the question. When you talk about terms and rates and charges, are you talking about new leases or leases that are already in existing?
This would be for new leases.
New leases. Okay.
Yeah. There's not going to be any retroactive.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. The next thing I have, if there's no questions on that, is the unleaded fuel update. We've kind of actually already touched base on all that, so I'll kind of, I don't think really. We talked about adding to the CIP.
I think we should talk about the CDOT.
Once that's on the CIP, we will, of course, it'd be way easier to start applying for grants and stuff like that. The CDOT grant that's available for that is for infrastructure only. So we can't use that grant for mitigation. We can't use that grant really even for engineering. That has to be for concrete in the ground, tanks on the ground, prior to applying for grant money for that. So right now, we're finishing up the draft of our unleaded fuel transition plan, which is due to CDOT on January the 1st. It'll be done long before that. My original idea was to get it done by the end of the month. I think we're pretty healthily on the way of having that done by the end of the month. And then, of course, that will be coming to you guys, too, so you can take a look at that. That's a very obligatory kind of plan, but we'll, of course, bring it to you.
Will that plan include a kind of a master plan approach of engineering?
On a much smaller scale. The plan that's due to CDOT on January 1st is a very brief overview. It's probably going to be, 10, 12 pages. It's looking at high-end stuff. It's looking at stuff that, will be reflected eventually in more detail in our CIP and our engineering discussions and stuff like that. It's looking at general things like what's our general plan for the transition? What's our general plan for incentives? What's our general plan for, who's going to do the fueling? What about approximately what it costs? And we're talking very round figures. This is the very beginning first step in this planning for the unleaded fuel transition. And I would tag on to the end of that. We're in an excellent position because we already sell unleaded fuel. It really is an obligatory thing for the state at the moment. Of course, it will help us in the long run, but the reason we're getting it in by the January 1st is from House Bill 1235, which requires 5 airports in Colorado to put it in, and we are one of those.
I think you stated earlier what the rate of adoption or rate of use or percent of the fuel sales were unleaded at our airport. Is that right? I missed it.
I did not.
Okay. Can we get that stated somewhere on the record by the airport of what percent of our fuel sales are unleaded versus leaded over time so we can look at what the trend is and we think we're going to hit that? Is that okay for me to ask that?
Yeah, that's actually was me that presented that.
But right, you presented it, but I'd like to hear it.
I did it with his numbers.
Okay.
I did provide the records, the fuel cell records, and I can certainly send those to you too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And is there a trend over time, or is that just a point in time?
That I don't have data on.
Yeah, I didn't look for a trend. I did a 3-year analysis, and to get a good average of sales. So I took 3 years of sales of Jet A, Avgas, and MoGas, and MoGas and Jet A are both no lead. So that represents almost 37% of our fuel sales.
Great. I'd like to see each of those 3 years so I can look at the trends.
Okay.
And then do we have any idea of, since a lot of the planes that are flying over our skies are not fueling here, is my understanding, do we have an idea of what type of fuel they're using? Just because we sell non-lead here doesn't mean it's being used up there. Do we have any idea what's going on over our heads?
I'm not sure how that information can be derived.
I'm not either, but I was asking asking you.
Now, there's no direct data.
Okay. So we could speculate on that too, I guess. Okay, thanks.
The flight schools do carry a credit card in each aircraft, and so when they need to refuel, they refuel wherever that's required, because we do have a time requirement on fuel in the plane. And so that's where the flight school's refueling, either wherever they do it, is based on what's left in the tanks and the time that they have to have left. We have minimums. And they do all have a credit card in there to pay for it by the flight school. So they are refueling at our airport and other airports. And then the flight schools are, Aerosphere has moved and retrofitted to unleaded. So our based flight school has moved over to unleaded.
Yeah, I got that. I was just wondering about the other ones because I hear the majority is not from our schools. But I guess if we can't figure that out, we'll just have to speculate. Okay, thanks.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to build on that and say, if you could also make sure that either council gets that data, or at least I do. I'd be curious just to see that information on the kind of 3-year usage there. That was news to me, and that was encouraging to hear. And then I know the board got off of the landing fee discussion for a second, but I was just wondering the kind of different rate scenarios that were proposed. I presume that will be presented in some way to council next week. Are we going to be also looking at that in real time as well? Is that kind of the game plan? Okay, thank you. And just for the board's awareness, I've been taking a bunch of notes on the comments that were shared. Part of my job as liaison here is to make sure to represent the board's position as best as possible. Obviously, you're all welcome to come to the meeting next week as well, but I will do my best to capture some of the common themes that were shared as well. Thank you.
Yeah, because I planned an event with my company for next Tuesday, because it was supposed to be the Monday after. So we'll get somebody representative, and if I can get my thing done, we'll see where we are in the agenda.
And I'm so
to
sorry about that.
participate.
That
Yeah.
just came up
Okay.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
I heard Tuesday night that they wanted to move it up, so
Yeah.
we're hurrying.
All right, Levi's at the podium.
Indeed, fancy. I want to show a couple of slides from a presentation that Airport Monitoring Systems gave to us a month or so back. For those of you who don't remember, Airport Monitoring Systems is a company that we use to help us get a tally on traffic. They do the monitoring, the breakdown of the traffic at the airport. So one of the things that I engaged with them was other services that they can potentially help us out with. So one thing that we talked about is potentially taking kind of the data we get and perhaps, maybe, making some kind of user interface that the public might be able to use. So this would include things, and I've got this little slide up here. I'll kind of just scan it real quick here. Integrating with our website, being able to show tracks of aircraft in real time potentially. Having a leaderboard, that kind of gets back to kind of comparing to where, traffic are, if they're, operating within the realms of, the noise abatement program and stuff like that. Heat maps that can kind of show you the concentrations. Transit groups that show you, based on, what airplane it is, kind of how they're flying or not. So they're kind of this tool that they're kind of fleshing out. And to my understanding, I think they have now launched it at one other airport, if I recall correctly. That's something that potentially, if we could, as a board, if we wanted to, I recommend be put forward there as an additional tool for the public to interface with that could kind of show what's going on at the airport and kind of compare it to our noise abatement program. On top of that, and I'll cover the other issue or the other item too at the same time. Something else we talked about is getting a baseline assessment on our voluntary noise abatement program. So one of the things I asked them is they offered was we can come in, we can look at your voluntary noise programs, we can compare it to others, we can do some engagement, we can give you an evaluation on that. So that was discussed also. So those are kind of the two services that they were pitching. It was a very interesting, it was a great presentation. They estimated approximately not quite $10,000 for the assessment on the baseline assessment, and then potentially about $6,000 or $7,000 for managing and creating the kind of the website portal for additional services, if you will, for what we might want to do with traffic tracking and stuff like that. So those were kind of the two, and this was a big long presentation they did, but those were kind of the two hot points of that. Is there any questions on any of that?
I'll go first. They've been tracking traffic for a year.
Oh,
less?
yes. So,
2
but closer to 2 now.
Okay.
Yep, closer
So
to 2.
can they give us a retrospective and look, so we can look, our VNAP's been around a long time.
Mhm.
Can they give us a backwards look? We're looking to cut expenses, so I did look at how much they were charging and being in software, all that made a
So
lot
do you
of
mean,
sense.
could they give us a backwards look at how closely
how
pilots
we
have
trended
been-
over time with historic
Potentially,
information?
I would have to reach out to them. My gut tells me perhaps not, because I know that our stored data doesn't necessarily take into consideration maps and ground tracks.
Okay.
We don't really have a set record of that, to my understanding. So maybe not. We'd have to ask the question.
Okay. It'd be interesting. It would be wonderful because it would
Mhm.
help us with our VNAP, but the expense of it is, just one more expense. And if there was any way they can look at it historic, that with the data, but if it hasn't been tracked, I understand.
The ForeFlight plug-in package, does that mean it's only tracking people who are subscribed to ForeFlight?
What were we looking at?
Page 17 of the packet.
Oh, okay.
The online.
If I recall correctly, the plug-in package they are talking about was essentially a packaging, if you will, to kind of put out on ForeFlight so pilots could download a PDF. Now, theoretically, right now they already can. All they got to do is go to our website and download that PDF, and they can have that on their kneepad also. But it's a part of the marketing, part of the the services they offer.
Okay, and then the project manager and graphics editor, why are they needed?
Well, they would be designing an interactive web page in essence, or at least the programming for that.
A project manager's needed to be used for our web page.
I mean, that's their internal systems. I mean, this is. I can't speak to the details of.
All right.
Yeah.
And then on the following page, it's $1,700 a year. Someplace.
This is pretty interesting. So the city contacted multiple suppliers for the landing fee proposal, right? And doing due diligence, wouldn't we want to get multiple estimates on this or multiple suppliers for this to see, is this competitive? Is this the best system? Seems like if you're going out and you're looking at a new service, the proper due diligence is to get multiple suppliers, I would think. And I'm just wondering if we have another perspective on this, another supplier that would give a bid.
That's certainly something we can look out to. This is kind of brand new stuff.
Okay. Great.
So there's that, but it never hurts to ask.
Yeah, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here a
Yep.
little, and I think I applaud this. I think it's interesting. It would help, I think, the public really understand a better idea what's going on in the airport. So sorry if I'm jumping ahead to get multiple suppliers involved.
Our purchasing code would require that we at least get quotes. Unless it was
Great.
determined that this was a single source because they own all the data today.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that I did want to just mention on that was that they're offering to do a community involvement process where they're working with the community to determine where are the problems with the current VNAP and how do you perhaps change things to make that better. And then on top of that, to monitor it and see whether it worked.
Yeah, I think letting the public understand what's going on, I think could alleviate. We heard some comments earlier about getting people involved and getting them informed. I think could really lower some of the issues potentially. So this kind of thing might help this direction. But thank you for looking at this.
Absolutely. So that's what I had on that. If there's no other questions around that, was there more questions?
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, what would be the point of this? We've discussed this at meetings before, that we have one of the best VNAPs in the state of Colorado, if not the country. So why are we spending money on this?
Well,
Or why
now-
would we?
Well, now we're getting down to, well, first of all, an assessment, so, we think we're doing all we can. aren't
So
we?
study?
An assessment. I know we're getting into the nitty gritty of it now, but yeah, having someone certainly doesn't hurt to have someone have an initial look at you. And again, we're getting into doing our due diligence. We're doing what we can to assess what we can to make improvements where we can.
just one comment, and I think trying to capture some of the spirit of what I'm hearing from other board members. I understand that a study or assessment, whatever term we want to use, doesn't inherently hurt, but I think the whole premise of half this discussion was the financial position of the airport and looking to think about what are the financial impacts of certain things. And then multiple board members have made comments along the lines of small things add up. So I think I appreciate the board members here trying to think about, like, is this a worthwhile investment here? I think with any kind of investment or spend, you want to understand what you're getting from that. And so if that is something that we're trying to seek, then we need to decide if that would ultimately be a decision of, is that worth it? That's a different conversation. But there is a downside in that there's a cost. And so I think, to be fair to some of the board members who have made that point, I just wanted to kind of pull that all together and acknowledge that, like, if we are truly trying to look at the fiscal health of the airport, we want to think about all of the whole life cycle costs and all of the different operations that we might be
Absolutely.
doing. Thank you.
Yep.
And I don't think this is a proposal this is something that our airport monitoring systems has brought us. This is a new technology that I believe Levi wanted to just make sure you were aware of.
Yep.
And for the record, we're already their customer.
Yes,
So
we are.
This is expanding on service.
This would be expanding upon the data they already have.
So they won the
additional
contract.
services.
At some point, they won the contract to provide this service. And so then this would be an addition to that service that we already get. Next up.
Right, next item. The next thing I have is really, we've already been covering it, the voluntary noise abatement program. So that was really all kind of involved in the highlights that I want to go over tonight. The one additional thing I'll add to that is we will be attending the National Noise Abatement Conference here in a couple weeks down in Florida. So next meeting, I hope to have more information from you regarding that also. All right.
Can I just ask a clarifying question then? Sorry. Oh, yeah, we're both Matthew, aren't we? What is the National Noise Abatement Conference?
So the national
That's a thing?
Yes, it is. It's something which is very new. It'll be held at Naples, Florida. For those of you who are airport geeks, will appreciate is the last airport in the United States which actually got mandatory noise abatement procedures applied to it. So very interested to get in there and talk to that crew and see how they kind of run that and how the whole system might work with that. To my understanding, I think this is the second year that they've done it. Don't quote me on that one. But it's put on by the American Association of Airport Executives. So it's the top end. If it's the organization that manages it, it's the big group in the United States. So they always do an amazing job. It's always very professional, always highly educational information. So if you're looking for information as a small airport on it, that's the place to go.
You learn something new every day. Thank you.
Will you be at that before the next board meeting, which is going to come pretty fast?
Actually, that's right, because this is the end of October. Probably not then. I think it's the second week in November that is, or the third week.
Okay.
I will double check on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Time's ticking.
Is this conference really needed? I feel like every time you're coming to the board, you're saying you're going to a conference and you're already 107% over budget.
And this is things that we budget for and things that we've talked about.
I mean, clearly it's not budgeted if you're over.
And this is, we usually do about 3 conferences a year, and this is the one that we decided that we really wanted to hit this year. So, yep, it was considered, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And that's all I have for information items. The next thing we'll be moving on to action items.
All right. Action items. Number 1 is landing fee options and recommendations to City Council. If anybody on the board would like to make a motion, I will entertain motions.
I would like to make a motion that no landing fees at all would be advised to the city council. I think there's other ways to create revenue, and that's not one of them. I think it'd be a safety issue, so my recommendation is no fees.
Recommending no fees to council. Do I have a second? Second. Go ahead. And so Tara seconded, and now I've got discussion. Anybody else have any input? That was fast. All right, we could go ahead and vote. Oh, okay, hold on. We get let's have to think about which seats you're 6. There we go.
I asked a question about real data on other airports that have done this, and there was no answer, no factual answer. So there's unanswered questions about how landing fees will affect the operation of our airport, and I would suggest we get some information on that before we make a no recommendation on landing fees, so we know the facts behind it.
We have an action item that we have to make a recommendation, and it has to go to council on Tuesday.
Okay, I'm just stating that we don't have complete information.
I think most of us do, so we can give you information we've looked at or presented here.
So
There's been a lot presented
I just
here.
Googled, there's 50 airports that have landing fees, and we've contacted all of them, and we know their rate of usage before and after landing fees.
No, and there's over 100, but they're not the same type of airport as ours.
Okay, so just saying, we're doing this without complete data. And I understand the urgency, and we got to make decisions without complete data, but I want to be on the record stating that we've not done all the due diligence to understand how this landing fee affects the vast majority of the airports that have done it. That's my comment.
Just some clarification on this. Would like a special event fee, would that be a landing fee or a tie down fee? A tie down fee. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would actually like to ask what City Council's rush is to get this decision.
I may be able to help with that.
Okay.
This city council exits the dais on December 2nd. And so any items that started with this council, we try to finish with this council. So it really is just a timing of election.
Oh, okay.
From a staff perspective, we receive the direction from this council. We would like for this council to act on it because it's an ordinance and takes 2 readings. We want
Okay.
it to be completed and through before the December 2nd meeting.
But it still would have to, there's still 14 more hoops to jump through, even if it were approved at City Council. So, City Council can't even just delay this until December?
You can make any recommendation to council you'd like.
It was me.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. To address Charles's statement and question a little bit, a cursory check through ChatGPT, which is of course 100% accurate, yielded that 91 GA airports in the United States are imposing landing fees on aircraft less than 12,500 pounds. However, the caveat there is that the FAA also does not track that. So this is like any other statistic. You can move it any way you want to. In other words, it's sticky. It's not really going to answer that question.
Can I comment on that? Go ahead. Yeah, you can. You just call the airport. You don't have to chat GPT anything. You just call the majority of the airports. It's work. It's hard, but this is a big decision. So you can get the facts if you want to put the work into it. I realize we're not going to get it in a week, but to say we can't do it is like, no, you can. I'm willing to do it. But so the data's there if you want to go get it. And yeah, I got a different number from my Google search too.
So I invite you to bring your numbers and present them, because we do have a board meeting again in a couple weeks because of our schedule.
Yeah, I wonder how that will go. Sorry, snarky comment, but I'm happy to work on that.
Please.
And how long has this issue been pondered by the board and the city council? We're talking about rushing it, and I'm losing track of time. It does seem like a rush now that it's a week out, but have we been looking at this for 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months? How long has this been tossed around to see just how much big of a rush this is?
So I believe we received this direction in May. You made your first recommendation on May 8th, which you can stick to if you would like to.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you had all of the information.
I do recall that. Thank you.
Okay, I gotta get.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to a couple of things. First of all, I just wanted a broader comment. I appreciate everyone bringing kind of bits and pieces of information to the discussion here to try to inform as best as possible in the absence of perfect information. I do want to recognize that, like, on other boards I've served on, that typically the information is provided from staff to the board, and it's not this kind of like hodgepodge of different information that we're trying to create this potpourri of a decision around. And so this is not a particular critique at this moment, but it's an observation that there's some differences in approach here, that I am sympathetic to folks wanting more complete information to make a decision upon. I'm often one of those in other settings. And so perhaps from a process standpoint, actually, I think to staff's credit today, like, there were a lot of different scenarios that were brought forward. I think in terms of like paying attention to kind of what data would help inform these decisions going forward, I'll just kind of like outline like that probably would inform this conversation better so that people can feel supported in kind of what recommendation they are making. So just wanted to kind of put that there. To respond to Board Member Menza's question, building on what Assistant City Manager Cedar said, multiple council members have expressed an interest in trying to make some kind of determination on this. That doesn't mean it's a yay or a nay inherently, but just trying to resolve this. For instance, just this past Tuesday, this city council currently decided to not take up the issue of minimum wage further, for instance. So that was an issue that had been kind of brought up under the current council, even before I was appointed, and now kind of closed out from this group. I think it's falling into that. On the timeline standpoint, it certainly feels like a rush, and I understand that. What I'll also note is this, I believe the topic was supposed to come to this group in September, and so just timing is both everything, and timing is also not everything at the same time. And so just wanted to address some of the perception there, because there were some timing things that shifted, including a city council meeting moving up and an airport advisory meeting not happening. So that also probably led to some of these feelings too, and just wanted to kind of acknowledge that for the public record. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll point out that the advisory board, we earn these positions because we're considered subject matter experts, and so that's why we sit at this side and present that information back. So we are not able to task. We can make recommendations or make asks, but we can't, we can't task. And our job is to present this information and to collect it. And all of our sources are publicly available. We don't have any secret data mines or places we go for information. It's all publicly available. So that is our job as an advisory board, to advise. So the motion is no landing fees. It's been seconded. Do we have any other discussion on that? Seeing none, I'd like to go ahead and vote. All in favor of a motion of no landing fees to City Council, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is to refer the emergency communications procedures to council. We do have that in our packet. I hope everybody had an opportunity to read through that. I would just point out that having a background in creating these for the air show, where they're 28 pages and they're very graphic and they're considering mass casualty. We at the airport don't face that unless we're having a huge public event. And this is designed for a single aircraft incident. We do have an active shooter situation addressed in there, which was what brought this all up and caused it to bubble up earlier this year. So the emergency plan is a starting point framework, and it really just addresses the procedure that we have to follow with the city, that you call 911 and you call your boss. And we go from there with letting the people who do hazmat and save lives and put out fires do their jobs. So just to clarify, I hope everybody has had a chance to look through it since we have had it before, that it's a beginning and it's not a finite fixed document. We can always augment it in the future if we feel there's areas of it that we need to focus on further. I did read it through, especially in the light of the active shooter situation that we had, and it is addressed in there. And for the air shows, I know it's called 911 and then call Levi, and then Levi calls his boss. So it's a very clear, we don't communicate, the city does. And I found that it followed that same process that I have to create for the ULPP for the air shows. So and I'd like to make a motion that we accept the emergency communications and procedures to be presented to council. I move that. I need a second, and then we could discuss it.
I'll second.
Okay, a second from Dan, and then would we like to discuss it?
I just have a problem with there's no communication to the airport tenants or to pilots listed in here. And we talk about, and I brought this up last time, this document will include guidelines to cover specific examples, including, and I think it needs to say included but not limited to. And it just needs to reference who this document is for, because I think if there's an issue on the airfield, people at the FBO need to know who to call, what do they do, and I would like to see something to that effect of what to do in an emergency available for people like at the FBO, for instance, or a tenant who is there on the weekends and the FBO is closed and they need to know what to do for an emergency and they can't get a hold of Levi. So I feel like that we could expand on this, and I think there's more we can do for it.
I actually moved to table the motion so we can study this further. We haven't had the time today.
So I do have a motion to accept it, so we'll take note of that. It is not a long read, but my mic's not on. It's not a long read, and I definitely have read it with the lens of air shows, which is the highest risk with potentially 10,000 people in a fiery crash, which we don't like to talk about. So I do think, to Tara's point, though, that a little bit further, that the chain of command of who to contact, we probably need that to be 4 or 5 deep, in case you're at a conference or a retreat or it's a holiday weekend and everybody's off, as to who to contact as we come through the city. So it does, I mean, we do have it pretty deep, but it's going to be 911, FAA, then the airport manager, then Sandy, and then communications. And just amongst us and the public, it stops at communications. That's as far as we go, because then they take over from that point. Public Works would be to turn off anything that, like a fuel pump fire, things like that. And again, 911 is where it's all going to start. And those agencies are going to have, they have their own plans. So this is the plan that we present to say, this is our structure.
Okay.
Will the city departments have input on this? Will the fire department come back like they do on mine?
City departments have already been consulted. And I would just point out on the flow chart at the very end, I feel like we built this because of the need to communicate with the aviation community when something was happening.
And also on Appendix B, right before that, you talk about being 5 deep. There's a big, long list of people after me to reach out to.
Okay. Madam Chair, if you're not willing to do the tabling of the motion, can you move to reconsider maybe so we can study this a little bit more?
Well, that would be that's the purpose of our discussion. So we can vote the motion down. So let's get Malcolm. Oh, okay. Okay, so seeing no more discussion, we will vote on the motion, and you can express support there or that you want more time. So if you're in favor of moving it forward now to City Council, please say aye. If you're opposed to sending it to Council now, please say nay. Nay. All right, nay gets it. Thank you. Our last public invited to be heard is now open, and it's again, state your name and address. Please state if you live in the city limits, and you've got 5 minutes. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak? Just, you can go ahead and come forward. I'm sorry.
So I don't know, I can see if there were other mics, but technically, like, you voted not to advance past that motion. That doesn't mean the topic is dead. If other people wanted to propose something, just to be clear, the board can decide to move on, but I just wanted to clarify because I thought I saw that maybe some other people wanted to jump in with something. Just procedurally wanted to clarify that.
I'll put that on the next agenda. Thank you. Okay, public, please.
Gary Stibbe, live on Hygiene Road. 2 quick comments. I'll be quick. I'm usually in my bunny slippers by now. So first is that for the airport manager, that surveillance system you're talking about, the airport monitoring systems, Boulder implemented that. And I did a deep audit on it, and less than half of the data was accurate when they first rolled it out. I don't know if it's been improved, but I will send that to you tomorrow so you can see it. And second, an idea for, for generating revenue. You mentioned developers building hangars. There must be money in it. Why doesn't the city build hangars and own them and rent them? A lot of airports, it seems like airports are either the hangars are all owned by the airport sponsor or are privately owned. I enjoy privately owning my hangar, but it is a possibility. You could build hangars, the airport would own them and rent them and generate revenue that way. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please come up. Oh, you can come up and queue up.
Good evening, Matt Menza, 2235 Parkview Drive. I want to thank most of the board members here who do their due diligence and study the topics, and all the boards I've been to, I usually study and get educated on the topics, and instead of stand up there and without the knowledge or understanding of the topic and bully people about data. So I appreciate that. I wanted to bluntly say that the city hasn't done their due diligence in order to be able to assess a landing fee to the airport. There is way too many opportunities to develop this airport and to create revenue that the city has purposely stonewalled for years. We've run off a lot of developments, a lot of commercial, stonewalled getting new FBO owners. There's a lot of things that this city has done on purpose, and there's core requests, and the reality is there's core requests that show that city council members have been looking for a way to appease the radical anti-airport activists who hate this airport and want it taken down for whatever reason, to include putting up low-cost housing. And the city has been beat up by these protesters, and the core requests show that they've been discussing ways to thwart aircraft activity and flying. And that is exactly the opposite of what you should be doing with an airport. It's 100%. Part of it's against the law. It's a big issue. So the optics aren't good for the city of Longmont, where you all of a sudden have, like Mrs. Menza said, 80 years with an airport here, and all of a sudden we're concerned about revenue for the airport. And it's kind of convenient that we had all these, group of activists, including, not to point you out, Mr. Schilling, but in 2023 you were quoted in the newspaper of wanting to get rid of the airport and put up housing. So there's a narrative here. There's a reality here, and this reality is the city's been squeezing this airport to death on purpose for an agenda. And the airport community and the citizens of this town are not going to accept it, because the secondary effects of a good, thriving airport is revenue to the businesses that operate here and in the local community. And that secondary effect brings in more tax revenue to the city than a short budget of $45,000, which we can solve very quickly with proper leadership. And so let's make it clear, this is not a tough solution or problem. There's a solution. The city needs better leadership. They need to do their due diligence, and they need to stop playing to this agenda. And hopefully this election will bring some new leadership into this town, bring some sanity back to the decisions that are being made. You know, stop developing stupid things around the airport that encroach on the airport and start doing some common sense stuff for the sake of the small businesses and the large businesses around here. We can do some great things with this airport. It's got a lot of history, and it's been here a long time, and the city has been squeezing it to death for years, and that's the truth that the people of the city need to know. And enough's enough. So let's start getting the other side of the facts, not just this landing fee stuff. And let's, as board members, do our damn due diligence and do some research before we get up here. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay.
This thing's always in the wrong spot. Yeah, my name is Troy Anderson again. I'm sort of a different guy than you probably usually run into. I was one of the directors of Ken Pratt Partnerships. We built 2.5 million square feet of office space in this little town. I ran the airport side of it. I ran all the technical stuff. I had a lot of relationship with guys like Ken for several years. And, you know, he always thought that it'd be great if we built a decent airport. We're 20 miles from the busiest national park in the world. 20 minutes. Why would they want to go to Fort Collins or something to drive up there? It doesn't make any sense. We ought to be developing stuff like that for the airport. I was an electrical engineer, did robotics, what everybody's calling AI today. One of the projects that I had was a little airplane called the Predator. The Predator was the one that went out and whipped the Arabs, really, because it gave the troops, the United States troops, the ability to know where they were going across that desert. It's the first time in history anybody's ever gone across that district. I bought the airplane off of this airport that we used for the tests on the equipment that went into the Predator. It was a communication system that gave them broadcast, point to point, and individual contacts with all the troops. They also had a GPS on board, so they knew exactly where they were. That was an AT&T product that we put into it, but it worked great. Part of that was we tried to do it through the fence out here. We had a big base at Edwards Air Force Base, El Mirage, where we built those things. We were that close to being able to pull those people in here, but we needed so much space that there wasn't here. We're going to do some other property on the outside perimeter to do some of the work, because there's a lot of communications people here. It was Seagate and those kind of guys that we brought in that were willing to work on those kind of projects. And I think that's still available. I mean, the world is changing just by leaps and bounds. And, you know, Colorado's known as a tourist place. That's really what it is. And we sit right on top of this big deal up here with Rocky Mountain National Park, and we're just ignoring it. And, I know a lot of people that fly in, park their airplane, get a rental car, and go up there. And that's a lot of money because they stay here for a while too. So, I don't know. If there's a point that a guy could help you out, I'd be glad to work on some of that. But I build airplanes at hangars at the airport, some of the bigger ones, and we just can't do much of that anymore. We need to get the city off the dime and let us develop that land around out there. You wouldn't have any problem at all. The concept of leasing dirt out to somebody is every other airport works like that. Just a few. Boulder did a deal where they took the airports back, but they're a little bit different. I don't know what else to say. I'm real happy you don't want to do this other thing, because you got to look at the general aviation. You don't look at the commercial ones. It's the general aviation airports that you want to do. I'm an airline transport pilot. I flew for Continental and TWA. I got tons of hours. I used to steal airplanes for a living. Great background for just about anything. And I just know there's a lot of things out there that we can do with this airport. So if, a lot of us, Mensa, is in on it. There's a lot of talk at the airport. How do we make it better? Grants are easy to come by. And we just need to get out here and get the idea of what we're going to do and build out that airport and make it run for us, okay?
Thank you. Let's see, right here.
Jonathan Casimir, 1900 Creekside Drive. My ideas for revenue generation would be hangars, and more hangars. I mean, every time I hear about the situation for hangars, Longmont specifically, people want to come from Erie to Longmont, but there's no hangars available. I mean, the wait list is like 2 years long for a single one. So if we had more hangars, we'd have more pilots, and you have more pilots, you have more revenue. Same thing. There isn't that much as in the way of like A&P services or a mechanic shop. It's all up on BJC. There's huge maintenance facilities up there. Ours is like a little shack, basically. So that's part of the FBO. So bigger FBO could probably supplement bigger maintenance services, and parts even would be really nice. The EAA chapter has ideas to offload at least one of the buildings from the city's hands so that it's no longer an expense to the city, if that's a concern. I did want to address the spreadsheet that you guys are maybe bringing to present to the city council. The line item on revenue that said miscellaneous is hiding the primary revenue source that the airport's bringing in. If hangar leases are the biggest income source, that should be its line item, and that should actually be the target for the greatest growth. Again, hangars, more hangars. The other thing I noticed too is that when you started you added so the first big sheet we're $45,000 on average diminishing a year over year. As soon as you added the landing fees, we're already in the black by 2029. Two things. The landing fee schedule, the revenue was flat. The expense for just implementing the landing fees increased year over year. The second thing on that was that the grant, the matching for the grant, the 5% match for the grant line, you added the expense for the grants, but the grants themselves that would have been the 95% of the income wasn't there. So it looked like you're expensing out your 5% without actually taking in the grant. Maybe I didn't understand the whole thing there, but the CDOT is actually pro-airport, and they did have a meeting with the EAA chapter in Longmont asking, hey, how can we help? How can we help? So I did want to touch on the ADSB as one of the methods for collecting landing fees. The AOPA, the CPA, and the FAA are all antagonists to having ADSB used for collecting landing fees because of the safety issues from people turning off their ADSB or low passes or things like that. So the motion or the Congress is very likely to pass that. So that's going to be one difficulty, that whatever service we're selecting may not even be able to do that. The other element that is already in place is owners of aircraft can now ask the FAA to make their registration information anonymous, at least to the public. So I don't know how far-reaching these other third parties are, but very quickly a lot of these owners are going to be able to go anonymous anyways, so not even be able to receive these landing fees after the fact. To touch on the pay-for-use thing in Longmont, you can walk around McIntosh Lake or on the St. Vrain Greenway without paying a $5 walking fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll try to keep it brief. One note that I would like to have made is $7 doesn't sound like a lot, maybe up front. However, if you look at the cost of an average lesson, if we land 3 times the same way that you would for a check ride or one of the mini mock check rides you take prior to a check ride, you're looking at $20, $30, depending on whether it's done by weight or done as a flat fee, because we run about 2,000 pounds, give or take, depending on whether you're max gross or half tanks. But an extra $30 per lesson on a $250 lesson is actually a pretty hefty increase on the percentage there for small businesses. The main thing I wanted to do was ask, I don't know if I can ask if we can get maybe guidance on the best way to we've heard so many great ideas on ways to generate revenue tonight. And we also know that part of the landing fees is in hopes of dealing with some of the noise that's been, talked about here. And it's a hangar talk every day, what we can do to improve safety, to reduce traffic, and to improve the airport. These are the kind of conversations that we have standing around between flights at the fuel pump at the FBO. This gets talked about all the time. It got talked about here. I'd like to ask for guidance on the best way to put forth an alternative proposal to City Council that would help with noise, help with revenue. They're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but it's not a great stone. What is the best way to bring them other avenues here to solve everyone's problems?
State your name and address real quick. Come back. Name and address.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Catherine Connor, 229 Airport Road.
Thank you. For the record, please.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hey guys, Trevor Eady, 1810 Jefferson Avenue. It sounds like I'm talking to a few pilots here. Former charter pilot, reformed, United now. But in my travels, I go to Longmont type airports all the time, and also, Denver International, Charlottesville, wherever have you. And you can go to places like Monmouth, New Jersey. You can go to West Palm Beach. You can go to Naples. And they all have the same style of fees, whether it's a landing fee or a ramp fee or a whatever. And it's always, we want to extract from the people who have money that they're willing to just, yeah, it's yours. These are the 12.5 and above weight class airplanes. These are the FlexJet guys who come in and bring someone in for their week-long staycation, and they paid $30,000 to get here. The guys who are here who are, my age and below, who are learning to fly and getting started and are barely affording to get their flight training done, aren't going to be able to handle the landing fees, or at least are going to do desperate things to avoid it. The guys who are also here who are 65 and above are retired and are not also going to be able to handle those fees. So the people we want to extract that kind of fee from are already taken care of by the same thing all the other airports are doing. The ones you talked about, the ones we've looked at in stats, they all aim at the 12.5 and above weight class aircraft. If it's got jets on it, it's probably going to be able to be okay. We don't get a ton of that. Second thing, there's some talk in just the wider world of third places. The reason people don't flock to our airport all the time is because they don't have a reason to be here. If you don't have a hangar and the FBO is not open, or you're not here on one of the 3 days that our restaurant's open half of the year, why are you here? It's great that we have that parking lot area where you can listen to ATC style traffic and hear it audibly, and your kids can play and watch. That's a perfect example. Why isn't our FBO like that? Because it's not a public space where you can just be there. If the gate's closed, no one wants to hang out at the airport. So these are my recommendations. Thank you. I said my name and address?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Dr. Grunsfeld.
John Grunsfeld, business at 229 Airport Road. I live in unincorporated Boulder County. This is the first time I've seen any numbers on the budget, and it was not really readable on the screen. It was not really comprehensible that leases are in miscellaneous. Some of the columns didn't add up. And so it's great that we saw it, but it's, to then jump and make a decision, I think is very premature from what was presented. I managed a $7 billion a year NASA budget down to line items of numbers like this, and it takes a lot of work to go through that, to budget those things, and that budget was not a sound representation. I think I want to really compliment City for getting it together for this presentation and for council, but I think it's going to take more work for us really to understand all the puts and takes on the airport. And the big picture is that the airport does pay for itself. I really do appreciate the work of the staff, but a rush to decide on landing fees without seasoned data, the kind of things that Charles was asking for and others, is a sign that it's really not ready to go for a vote by council, in my opinion. On that basis, it's really a setup to make a bad decision. It's also a disservice to the public, I think, to rush a decision, and to the airport community in particular, and also to move the meeting when it's been scheduled and advertised. I can't make it next Tuesday. The chair of the AAB can't make it. Many of us, have made other plans. In order to be able to make it in November, I'm actually pretty pissed off about that, but I don't want to reflect that. I think the key is not I think it's important to ask some of the small airports, and there are very few airports, little municipal airports like ours, that do landing fees, but there are some. More important is to ask the 2,200 other small municipal airports that close their budgets, that have money for investment, that get the tens of millions of dollars of FAA investment without landing fees. How do they do that? And there are many ways they do that, but that's a more important question. I mean, little Akron Airport in Colorado has gotten millions of dollars recently in FAA grants, a brand new terminal to replace their already nice terminal, and they have 30 airplanes, and it's a town of 5,000 people. We can do much better than this. As far as revenue, I think hangars, businesses, we can ask for private investment. A lot of airports get their 5% from local businesses that realize that the airport contributes $75 million to the local economy. And so putting in $500K or $1 million to get $10 million to build a terminal and a restaurant and public spaces at the airport is a bargain for them. Longmont just recently enacted a tourism tax. Why isn't the airport getting a fraction of that tourism tax to fund airport development? Greeley has a huge utility scale solar plant on their airport, and the revenue pays for the airport. They also have an oil well, but that's another story. A lot of airports own their FBO and take the profits out of the fuel sales to fund the airport. And they're typically very efficient. Another thing I noticed, having to do with the 50% or the 100% administrative fee. If we go to 100% administrative fee, that's 100% overhead on Levi's salary. That's higher than Harvard. There's something wrong with that. We've passed over the last 50 years, the gentleman who said he was here since '79, he's right. We've passed on hundreds of millions of dollars of grant funding opportunities to improve our community just by not applying, by not going after them, by fighting the airport such that the FAA wouldn't consider us for grant applications. Random things, Aspen just announced their brand new noise abatement plan. It's state of the art. I encourage everybody to go look at that. It rewards operators for operating quietly. And on that topic, you've heard me say this before, but we haven't tapped a lot of the low-hanging fruit. Students are required to look in the airport flight directory before they make a flight to Longmont. And under noise, it says, contact airport manager, and gives Levi's office phone number. That's not a description of a noise abatement plan. And if they call Levi, it'll go to voicemail, and they're going to make the flight here not knowing what that plan is. And we haven't really tapped the AWAS either. A lot of airports say, and we have to get approval to do this. I mean, we do say, avoid overflight when parachute operations are in effect. Why can't we say, avoid touch and go landings from dusk to dawn or from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Let's just get approval to do that. It doesn't say prohibit it, it says avoid. That would be really useful. On the online dashboard innovation project, that's something we could probably get Longmont Community College or the Innovation Center to get some students to build for us at much lower costs using a portable ADSB, and Levi and I have talked about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing no more, I'm going to close public invited to be heard, and we're going to go to board, city, and staff comments. And I will start, we don't have it on here for future agenda items on our agenda, but I would like to add that now. And our future agenda items being to investigate a grant to remove the underground fuel tank, the leaded fuel tank, and to remove that. A grant or a motion after Levi goes to his class, engineering and infrastructure, so that we are prepared to accept new fuel facilities, which would be for the no lead fuel. We don't have a space for it. That tank has to come out, and we have to rearrange the furniture in order to even move into the next phase to carry sufficient quantities of no lead fuel. It's in a truck right now, so it's not, and the Jet A is in a truck, but the av gas is in the ground. We need that out in a new structure. So I'd like to put engineering and infrastructure study to prepare us for the unleaded, which may come out of Levi's report. That would be to reconfigure our fuel supply. I may shorten that. Future agenda item to draft plans to reconfigure our fuel supply. And then the last one is how do we request historic preservation, and what are the guidelines on that? And we can look into that as a board. And how do we get a proclamation for the airport in honor of the 80th anniversary? So those would be future agenda items for November, please. And then I've got it open.
Thank you. Sandy, I would just like to thank you and your staff for preparing that budget and the landing fee analysis. I know that was a lot of work. I appreciate the ladies that were here. I didn't get to really thank them. So thank you for doing that. I know that last meeting that we had, we asked to have financials shown to us because it is very important. And I was actually kind of shocked that we didn't have that until this meeting. So it is super helpful. It helps us make better decisions about how we can support the airport going forward. And I think out of this meeting, the takeaway is there are a lot of ways to support the airport and generate revenue. We've heard it from the board, we've heard it from the community, and I think that until we've exhausted all of those avenues to generate revenue, that we shouldn't even consider landing fees. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And to that note, I will draft the letter to council to have that prepared. When do you need that by with the date change? Yesterday?
Tuesday would be fine.
Tuesday,
Yeah,
okay.
the packet is already out there, so we'll bring it to them.
Okay, I'll get it done over the weekend. Okay.
What is the protocol or procedure when letters are going from the board to city council? Does the board get a chance to review that and comment?
I can send it to the board members. You can only comment back to me.
That's fine.
So don't use reply all. And then I will draft it, and it would show who voted for and who against.
Okay.
In
Can
that
we
letter.
make that procedure moving forward? Because I think letters have been going to city council from the board that were not, at least I didn't get a chance to review them. So can we make that either, if that is standard procedure, start doing the standard procedure or make it a standard procedure?
Yeah, this would be the first time council has asked us. And so, not just this year, this is the first time.
No, but
So-
letters have gone to the city council that I
Yeah,
didn't get a
based
chance
on
to
a
review.
vote. Yeah, okay. So I will get it done this weekend and
Thank
get
you.
it out to everybody, you bet. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to echo Board Member Menza's comments. Thank you, Sandy, Levi, and Sandra, and was it Jennifer who joined us as well? Really appreciate all of that. I know there's desire for even more kind of frequent and expanded kind of breakdowns of that, and I think hopefully that feedback is. I saw you guys taking some good notes there, but overall that was a lot of helpful information to help inform the board's discussion, and just really want to thank you guys for the work on that. I know we only saw one of the landing fee scenarios, and there were like 10 up there as well, and so there's work that goes into what wasn't presented as well, and just wanted to say thanks for all of that. Also, I just wanted to thank the board for a really thoughtful discussion and a lot of questions and personal experience that you all brought to the table today. I think we heard a really robust conversation, and I also want to thank everyone else who not only came today but also stuck around for a 3.5-hour meeting. So thank you all for paying attention, showing up, and sharing your input as well. Two last things. One, on the letter, can we double check procedure? Sandy, quick question here. Can we double check procedure for the letter? I mean, one, my understanding is that will be a pretty straightforward statement of like, this was what the board decided. But two, I want to make sure we're not violating Open Meetings Act here with sending a letter and then having multiple people make it a rolling meeting situation. So can we double check before that gets sent around what's allowed between board members? I'm not saying we are. I just want to make sure we don't for that.
In my experience, we never saw the letter. The chair wrote it. We voted, made a motion.
Right.
He wrote it, speaking of Harrison, and it went out. So,
and that certainly wouldn't violate that. If it starts to get feedback coming from multiple members, that might create a problem there. So I just want to make sure we're above board, pardon the pun. And then the last thing I just want to share, just a quick update. Sandy briefly mentioned the saturated pattern policy update earlier, and I just wanted to shed a little bit more light on that if you weren't at the city council meeting or watching that or following that a couple weeks ago. Council appreciated the recommendation from the board to consider a saturated pattern policy and voted to move that forward in advanced discussions by a 5-2 vote in, when was that, September, October 7th? I can't remember now. October 7th, thank you. With a 5-2 vote to begin discussions with the FAA about what kind of implementation would make sense there. So just wanted to pass on that update as well as the thanks for an idea that came from this board that council is acting on right now. So thank you very much.
So my question on the letter was, and I appreciate sunshine laws. We got to respect them, follow them carefully. My concern is if a letter's going out from the board and my name's on it, I'd kind of like to make sure I agree to that since my name's on it. How do we do that? I don't necessarily have to comment on it, but if I object, maybe it's a quick objection just back to the chairperson.
you objected to the motion, so that'll be reflected in the letter.
No, I'm talking about letters in general. When
With a
the
similar
board's
letter.
sending letters to council
So we indicate
and my
that.
name's on it.
Yeah, we indicate it in the signature, so it'll say who voted for it and who voted against it.
I'm
in
talking about the
letter.
whole letter, not just the vote.
But you voted against it, so it doesn't matter. We could say we want to plant trees on the runways and you voted against it. So it doesn't matter the
Yeah, this-
context because you voted against it.
I'm really referring to a letter before that had a lot of context and a lot of explanation.
That we discussed.
But there's, it's the power of the pen. It's not all verbatim stuff, it's interpretation. And no, I get the vote, and I was represented there.
Mhm, you were, yeah.
But, all right, so I guess if I object to something, a letter that goes to city council, how do I respond to that? That has my name on it. Says, okay, we did this in this meeting, and this is what we agreed to, and this is why we agreed. And I say, well, that's not the way I remember it. And I just want to, if my name's on it, I want to make sure I'm being represented accurately. And if I'm not, I want to know how to deal with that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question and the intent of that. I'm trying to think of another analogous situation I'm familiar with there. I won't speak to previous events that have happened, and so just going forward on this, I think there are a couple ways you could speak before council or email council directly.
Okay.
You could contact staff and say, hey, can you include that as an update?
Great.
That I didn't support that. I also, again, am taking notes of this discussion, and beyond the letter will also represent different facets of the substance that was discussed and the perspective there when I share that with council too. So hopefully that gives you a few options there.
Great.
I
Thank
think in an ideal world, which this is not, as we've talked about from a timing standpoint, but in an ideal world, if there was a letter that was drafted by a board, what I've seen on other boards is that like that draft comes back to the next meeting, people can discuss, are they comfortable with that wording, or if they want to make adjustments and then move it forward.
That would be a lot more ideal.
That's the answer, yeah, but we don't have time. so.
Okay.
And it will show the board, you're part of a board, you're part of a group, and that the group voted no and you were dissenting. So it
Yeah,
will
it's
show
not, it's
that
not
in
the vote I'm
signature.
talking about. It's all the context around it.
Right, so
the
you
verbiage.
disagree with the context, and it'll say that in the letter. That'll be in there. It'll be in the signature. So it will be addressed. But typically, yes, we would have made this decision, prepared a letter, visited next month, but it's going to be after the deadline.
Yeah, I'm just saying the last letter that went out had my name on it, and I didn't get a chance to review it. So it's happened. I think we got a solution. Let's work on it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
I just have a quick question for you. Sandy mentioned a letter in May. This is prior to my term beginning on this board. Is that something that you're going to be rescinding and making that comment in this letter?
That was not a request from council, so it was a proactive move by this board. So our new recommendation will override that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Assistant City Manager, for attending, as well as your staff. I feel like you have a lot of work to do. Get out that red pen and start cutting. I mean, that's not really a joke. It's quite serious if we want to do the things that we want to do with this airport to make it pretty, because it sounds like everybody hates it. On top of that, I do think that we should review the emergency plan in much greater detail. I do think that it needs a lot of work, a lot more detail. Very rough draft still. I think it's still in that status. I think it needs step by step and not just bullet points. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I charge the board, as much as I'm able to read that document all the way through and make notes on it and provide that input in a summary to give back to Levi. So you can comment on it into the record and then provide him with it as a document as well. For any notes, just edit that document or however it's easiest for you. And so, and then any information that you want to research based on the future agenda items and the things we've discussed here, that's all part of this discussion, that we figure out what we're going to focus on in the future. And I'd like us to get focused on electrification. That's another future agenda item. Is just we've got to start figuring out how we do that. We talk about it and we've had presentations, but we get nowhere if we don't have a plan and some engineering and plans. And we are way out of our master plan, but these things weren't in it anyway. So it's all fair game. So we don't require a new master plan to have those discussions. And so I always invite you to add anything to the agenda. You can contact Levi and add things to the agenda if you've done some research and want to present something. And then on the emergency plan, let's see if we can get that, our input to him at the next meeting, and get that recommended and forward and off the agenda as well. And again, that's a living document, so we can always make additional changes to it. Our next meeting will be Thursday, November 13th, 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. right here. And a joke. You're right. And I definitely invite you to bring forward things that you see, and again, to the discussion of how do we bring more revenue to the airport, and do some research on the things that are making you scratch your head and that we've discussed here, especially tonight, in the effort to, we always want to build the coffers of the airport, and we do want it to be robust, and we do want it to do it in the best and most cost-effective way, in the way that will produce the most income. And hangars is definitely one of the ways. There's certainly a demand, and that isn't going away. And so I just really appreciate everybody bringing the information that they have to this meeting, and the feedback that we've gotten. We'll go ahead with our recommendation. We'll meet in just a few more weeks, and then anybody that can attend on Tuesday night at council, it can speak as the public. You can represent yourself as the public and speak at council, including anybody in the audience. So I really appreciate the turnout, and I appreciate the comments and the observations. These are challenging times, and I'd much rather be talking about an air show. Anybody who knows me knows that. So I'd like to get back over to that kind of stuff, and even considering how we can do the air show for a profit. So we have done that as free to the public. We have had robust sponsorship in the past. We didn't get as much this last time, but that's something that once we can kind of clear the air on some of these things, we can start working on that for not 2026, but 2027. And I'd like us to get that in January up on the agenda so we can start working on some fun stuff at the airport. I appreciate everybody's input. I hope you have a good night, and I don't have to have a motion to adjourn, so I'm going to adjourn. I do. Will you guys?